Chapter 699. When Shi Mengwan arrived home, it was almost evening. Father Shi went to the field to pick vegetables. Mother Shi was cooking in the kitchen. Shi Mengru, who was already in the second year of middle school, was doing her homework in her room when she heard the sound of the car and ran out. "Sister? Why are you back?" It wasn't the new year, so Shi Mengwan rarely went home. "It's nothing. I missed you guys." Shi Mengwan smiled. Although she came back in a hurry, she still had gifts. She took out a big box from the back seat of the car and handed it to Shi Mengru. "Didn't you say that the tablet had a black screen last time? I bought you a new one." "Wow, sister, you're so nice." "Moo." Shi Mengru jumped up on her tiptoes and kissed Shi Mengwan. "You just spoil her." Mother Shi heard the sound and came out of the kitchen. "A student girl has already used up 2 tablets. No one else uses tablets. Not only does she have a computer, but she also has a tablet and a phone. Don't spoil her." "Don't worry. I won't spoil her." Shi Mengwan rubbed her sister's hair. "Mom, you're watching over her. Are you spoiling her just because she bought some electronic products?" "You." Mother Shi wanted to say something else, but Shi Mengwan took out a bigger box from behind. "Mom, this is for you. Last time, I heard from Qing saying that this physical therapy device sold very well in their hospital. It's also very useful. Your shoulder always hurts. Try this. Why waste this money? How painful can it be? Just bear with it and it'll pass." "Mom, don't worry about money." Shi Mengwan moved the other gifts out of the car. "Our studio's business has been very good recently. It's quite busy. Don't worry, your daughter can make money. You're still back if you're busy." Mother Shi took the gifts. "Didn't you just come back for the Mid-Autumn Festival? You don't have to come back anymore. You're still running back and forth." "Mom, are you chasing me away?" Shi Mengwan pretended to get into the car as she spoke. "All right, I've finished delivering the things. I'm leaving." "You child." Mother Shi patted her on the body. "Let's go. I'll ask your dad to buy 2 more vegetables. We'll have more food tonight." Shi Mengwan reached out and hugged Mother Shi. Because she saw Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei unhappy together, no matter how unhappy they were along the way, she calmed down. She shouldn't be surprised, nor should she be surprised. Zhang Haoze lied to her time and time again, but she was stupid and believed him time and time again. This time, there really wouldn't be a second time. She would never trust him again. Looking at the setting sun, Shi Mengwan made up her mind. When Father Shi came back, he was very happy to see Shi Mengwan. The family ate happily. Shi Mengwan sat and chatted with her parents for a while. Then, she went to check on Shi Mengru's homework. Actually, there was nothing much to check. Shi Mengru's results were pretty good, and she had always been among the best. She even planned to go to university in Lin City in the future so that she could have a companion. After taking a shower, Shi Mengwan returned to her room, but she couldn't fall asleep. She was in a bad mood. He glanced at his phone. There were a few missed calls. Later, she turned off her phone, but Zhang Haoze still called her. She didn't understand why he would call her. He already had Chen Feifei. Why did he have to provoke him? She had made up her mind to give up many times, but every time, she would waver under Zhang Haoze's domineering and pestering. Every time she made an oath, it would be broken by Zhang Haoze in the end. It was really enough. This time, she really wouldn't believe him again. She wouldn't believe a single word he said anymore. Shi Mengwan thought this in her heart when she blocked Zhang Haoze's number. Shi Mengwan blocked Zhang Haoze's number, but she couldn't let herself fall asleep smoothly. Just as she was about to fall asleep, her phone rang. The ringing sound of the phone that kept disturbing her dreams forced Shi Mengwan to open her eyes. She glanced at the screen. She didn't recognize the number. She pressed it. After a while, her phone rang again. She pressed it again. After a while, it rang again. She pressed it again. After the 5th time, Shi Mengwan finally couldn't help but pick up the phone. Didn't your mother tell you that it's very impolite to call someone in the middle of the night? No. My mother passed away a long time ago. The voice on the other end instantly woke Shi Mengwan up. She looked at the phone in her palm. It was an unfamiliar number, but the voice was indeed Zhang Hao's. She closed her eyes and was about to hang up. I'm at your door. Zhang Hao's next sentence made her stop. Right now, I'm at your door. It's not the apartment in Lin City, it's your hometown. Qingfeng Town. Shi Mengwan blinked. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. Zhang Hao, are you crazy? Come out. I don't want to. Shi Mengwan's voice was full of anger. Zhang Hao, that's enough. Let me tell you, we're done. There's no future, and there's no breakup. Anyway, we've never been on good terms. As she spoke, she hung up the phone. Afraid that Zhang Hao would call again, she swiped her hand and prepared to turn off her phone. At this moment, a message popped up. Perhaps, you want me to visit your parents? Crazy. Shi Mengwan looked at the message and stopped turning off her phone. Was Zhang Hao crazy? He wanted to visit her parents at this time? Did he think the matter wasn't big enough? While she was angry, the phone on the other end rang again. Looking at the flashing number, Shi Mengwan picked it up gloomily. Zhang Hao, that's enough. What do you want? We didn't take any precautions yesterday. You might be pregnant. Do you want me to tell your parents about this? Are you crazy? Shi Mengwan's face was red. Half of it was angry, and the other half was shy. Zhang Hao still remembered to take precautions. But the last time yesterday, there weren't enough condoms. She wanted to stop it, but it was too late. She could only be glad that it was a safe period. But Shi Mengwan didn't believe in a safe period even once. One had to know that Su Qingsang was a doctor in the obstetrics and gynecology department. She had told her a lot about all kinds of accidental pregnancies in their hospital. Many of them thought that it was a safe period. But in Su Qingsang's words, a safe period wasn't safe either. It still depended on the person. Now, Zhang Hao, that bastard, actually used this to threaten her? How could she dare to let him talk nonsense in front of her parents? It wasn't like she didn't want to live anymore. Zhang Hao, don't go too far. 5 minutes. Zhang Hao said these 3 words and hung up the phone. Shi Mengwan was very angry. She only felt that her stomach was hurting now. She looked out of the window. The sky was gloomy, and it seemed like it was going to rain. She gritted her teeth, got up helplessly, put on her coat, and went downstairs. It was almost midnight, and Father Shi and Mother Shi were both asleep. Shi Mengru's room was at the other end of the corridor, while Mother Shi and the others' rooms were downstairs. This kind of self-built house usually had a large hall outside. Shi Mengwan could only be glad that she didn't have to be afraid of waking her parents up. Before leaving, she didn't know if it was because of some strange coincidence or something else, but she picked up her bag and car keys. When she went outside, the cold wind that hit her face made her stagger. After stabilizing her body, she saw a row of luxury cars lining up on the side of the road diagonally opposite the Shi family's courtyard. If anyone didn't wake up now and saw so many luxury cars in such a small town, they would probably be shocked. Shi Mengwan closed her eyes and had no choice but to get into the car in the middle. It was much warmer inside the car than outside. Shi Mengwan didn't plan to stay for long. It was warm inside the car, and the lights above her head made her feel a little warm. But that was all. Zhang Hao, what exactly do you want? She didn't come out because she thought that she was afraid of him or anything. She was just worried about her parents' thoughts and feelings. If Zhang Hao thought that she was afraid of him, then he was really wrong. To her surprise, Jean Hauser didn't seem to be angry. His tone was still gentle. Why didn't you tell me when you went home? I called you and you didn't answer. I was very worried about you. Ignoring the concern in his words, Shi Mengwan glared at the person in front of her. Tell you? Why should I tell you? Who are you to me? Where I go and what I do doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, right? Her words today were very blunt, and her attitude was very wrong. Jean Hauser wasn't sure what happened to Shi Mengwan. They had been getting along well these few days, so he thought that her attitude would soften. If I remember correctly, I seem to be your boyfriend, right? So now she was saying that what she did had nothing to do with him. Could it really have nothing to do with him? Really? Then let's break up now. Anyway, he couldn't be her boyfriend alone, so she didn't want him. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes slightly. He finally realized that something was wrong. What happened? She rushed home. Could it be that her grandmother was forcing her to marry again, or asking her to give in and agree to some conditions? What happened? Shi Mengwan found it funny. This person actually had the nerve to ask her what happened. Shouldn't he be the one who should be telling this sentence the most? She wanted to stab him a few times, but Shi Mengwan held it in. They had talked too much about Chen Feifei. Her questions had never been answered positively. The following answers. No, there were. But behind those answers, she would always lose some of herself. She catered to him and accepted everything he gave her. Now, she didn't want it anymore. What could happen to me? I'm just tired of it. He wasn't the only one who would play two-timing outside. If she was given a chance, she would prove it to him. Shi Mengwan, didn't need to hang herself on him. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes and looked at Shi Mengwan's expression seriously. He was surprised to find that what she said was actually true. Tired of it? He narrowed his eyes and listened to Shi Mengwan's rather heartless words. He tightened his grip on her hand, and his gaze returned to its previous gloominess. Do you know what you're talking about? Of course I know. Shi Mengwan retracted her hand and took a step back. Jean Hauser, please stay away from me. We're not suitable. She reached out to pull the car door, but found that she couldn't open it at all. At the same time, Jean Hauser actually asked someone to start the car. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and turned to face Jean Hauser. Jean Hauser, that's enough. Stop the car, do you hear me? She was very angry. She reached out to pull the car door, but the car door didn't move at all. Shi Mengwan was furious. She raised her foot and kicked the car door. Unfortunately, she was thin and weak, so she couldn't make the car door move at all. Shi Mengwan's sharp temper rose to her head at this moment. She used both her feet to kick the car door, not caring if she would hurt her feet. Jean Hauser hugged her waist and gestured for the driver to stop the car. The moment the car stopped, Shi Mengwan bit down on his shoulder. In the late autumn weather, she wore a lot of clothes. To Jean Hauser, this strength was no different from scratching an itch. He let her bite until she didn't have the strength to bite anymore. He lifted her body and lifted it up. Drive. Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan was angry. He didn't listen to her at all, did he? Before the car started, Jean Hauser looked at her and took away the bag in her hand. He took out the car keys from inside. He gave an order, and soon, someone came over and took the car keys. Shi Mengwan was angry in her heart. Jean Hauser, don't be too shameless. If you really talk nonsense in front of my parents, at most, we'll just fight to the death. You can try. You came out so late and brought your bag. Didn't you just want to leave? Shi Mengwan was extremely angry. Of course she wanted to leave. She would rather go back to Lin City and quarrel with Jean Hauser slowly than let Mother Shi see Jean Hauser appear. It wasn't easy for Mother Shi to calm down during this period of time. She no longer insisted on introducing her to a blind date. If she saw Jean Hauser appear again, it was hard to say if Mother Sure would find someone to go on a blind date with her again. What are you angry about? Jean Hauser really didn't understand. They had been fine during this period of time. She had also started to accept him again. What was she doing today? Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk to him. It was already very late at this time. She turned around and leaned against the back of the chair with her back facing Jean Hauser. She closed her eyes. She used this action to silently resist. She wouldn't answer his question, much less be with him. Jean Hauser looked at her face. It was rare that he didn't force her to speak like he did in the past. He just stared at Shi Mengwan's face. Shi Mengwan felt Jean Hauser's gaze and closed her eyes even more tightly. However, at first, she pretended to be asleep, but later on, she really fell asleep. No matter what, she was someone who had been working all day and driving for half a day. In a daze, she really fell asleep. When Shi Mengwan woke up, she was still woken up by the ringing of her phone. On the other end of the phone, Mother Shi was full of anxiety. Wan, where did you go? Why is your car gone? And where are you? Where did you drive to so early in the morning? Where could she drive to so early in the morning? Shi Mengwan originally wanted to deny it, but she suddenly remembered Jean Hauser's appearance yesterday. She was shocked and quickly woke up. She explained to Mother Shi that something happened at the factory last night, so she returned to Lin City overnight. Although Mother Shi believed this excuse, she scolded her again. She felt that she didn't care about her health and that staying up late to drive was very tiring. But now that she was sure that she was fine, Mother Shi said a few more words to her and hung up. Shi Mengwan hung up the phone and suddenly realized something. The environment in front of her wasn't in her apartment in Lin City. Chapter 700. The unfamiliar environment in front of her wasn't her apartment. Shi Mengwan felt a headache coming on. She sat up and looked at the environment in front of her. This room was very big. It was almost as big as her small apartment. Other than the bed, there was also a sofa and an armchair on the other side. Near the balcony, there were elegant and simple beige curtains. The entire style was European palace style, but it didn't make people feel comfortable. She got out of bed and found that it wasn't her shoes by the bed, but a pair of extremely comfortable indoor slippers. She put on them and walked towards the balcony. When she opened the curtains, she was almost shocked. The huge man-made lake was in front of her. The green in front of her was like a park. But it looked much more elegant than a park. She looked to the side and saw that it was all villa areas. She frowned. She was friends with Su Qingsang, and she would sometimes attend some clients' dinner parties. She had a certain understanding of some famous villa areas in Lin City. However, the neighborhood in front of her was very unfamiliar to her. She stood for a while and remembered that the last person she saw was Jean Hauser. She was about to call Jean Hauser. She didn't know that Jean Hauser was standing at the door. Where is this? Why am I here? How did he bring her here? No, it should be said, how did she appear here without realizing it? My house. Jean Hauser walked towards her. The morning light shone in from the direction of the balcony. The person in front of her was tall and handsome. The next sentence almost made Shi Mengwan's legs go limp. This is my home in Qing City. Shi Mengwan staggered and almost couldn't stand. Jean Hauser quickly supported her at this moment. For Shi Mengwan, who had just woken up, she didn't have much energy to resist him. Her lips moved, and a gloomy look flashed across her eyes. You, who agreed to you? Who agreed to you that I was coming to Qing City? Jean Hauser looked at the anger on her face. He didn't seem to understand why she was so angry. I told you that I wanted to bring you to Qing City. Shi Mengwan was so angry that she almost laughed. You said you wanted me to come, so I came. She said this and walked past Jean Hauser to walk out. Jean Hauser grabbed her arm. Are you angry? Why? Why? Do you think I can't be angry? Do you think I have no reason to be angry at you for taking me to another city or another place without my consent? Jean Hausa was stunned for a moment. Seeing the anger on Shi Mengwan's face, he nodded. I'm sorry. It's my fault I didn't ask for your permission. But I still have things to deal with here, and I want to be with you, so I used the wrong method. He lowered his stance a little. Shi Mengwan wasn't used to seeing Jean Hausa like this. In the past, she would have wanted to question him, but today, she was too lazy to even do so. I accept your apology, so can I leave now? Jean Hausa didn't expect Shi Mengwan to have such a reaction. Shi Mengwan had already walked outside. When she reached the door, he tried to run after her. Shi Mengwan suddenly stopped in her tracks and turned back. Where is my bag? And my car? It's downstairs. I've asked someone to park the car in front of your apartment. After hearing this, Shi Mengwan didn't ask any more questions. She turned around and continued to walk out. Jean Hausa followed behind her. Shi Mengwan took a few steps and realized that there was no way out. She turned around and looked at Jean Hausa, who was following behind her. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she saw a faint smile in his eyes. The stairs are this way. Jean Hausa explained very kindly. Shi Mengwan snorted and walked past him in the opposite direction. Her angry look made Jean Hausa decide not to tell her that the place where she had walked to the end of the road was actually the elevator. As long as she pressed the button on the side, the elevator would come up. Instead, he chose to follow behind her. Shi Mengwan was wearing cotton slippers, so she naturally couldn't walk fast. She didn't know if the air conditioner was turned on, but the warm wind in this season made her feel a little hot. The stairs were indeed on the other side. After going downstairs, she wasn't in the mood to appreciate the decorations here. She looked around and immediately saw her bag on the sofa. She went forward to pick it up and continued walking outside. After taking 2 steps, she realized that the shoes on her feet were wrong. She had no choice but to turn around and look at Jean Hausa. Where are my shoes? In the shoe cabinet at the entrance, Jean Hausa said. Shi Mengwan nodded and went forward to open the shoe cabinet. Sure enough, she found her shoes and put them on. She reached out and opened the door. The moment the door opened, the cold wind that blew into her face made Shi Mengwan quickly and instinctively close the door. She turned around and looked at Jean Hausa. Qing City is in the north? She always heard him say that he wanted her to accompany him back to Qing City, but she really hadn't paid attention to where Qing City was. She looked at her body. Before she went out yesterday, she had taken a light woolen coat, but now that she had just woken up, she didn't know where the coat was. She was only wearing a thin sweater, so she was really cold now. She glared at Jean Hausa and gritted her teeth for some reason. Mr. Jean, can I ask how I got in yesterday? Jean Hausa looked at the anger on her face and didn't seem to mind. I carried you in. You were sleeping a little soundly. When I got out of the car, I covered you with a blanket. Of course, he wouldn't say that he got into the car directly after getting off the plane. There was a heater in the car, and they came directly from the underground garage, so it was normal for her not to feel cold. Shi Mengwan nodded. Her expression was very conflicted and a little angry. Good, very good. Great. In such a situation, if she didn't want to get sick from the cold, she had to ask Jean Hausa. You don't have to leave in a hurry. There are many fun places in Qing City. You can play for 2 days before you leave. Is this considered a forced purchase? Shi Mengwan was angry. Jean Hausa put his arm around her waist. This is a sincere invitation. Shi Mengwan raised her foot and was about to step on the back of his foot. However, she was wearing cotton slippers, so no matter how hard she tried, she didn't cause any harm to Jean Hausa's foot. She was angry and turned around, not wanting to talk to him. However, her stomach made a very uncooperative sound, and Shi Mengwan's face instantly turned red. Let's go. Let's eat. Jean Hausa brought her in the direction of the dining room. Previously, Shi Mengwan was so focused on leaving that she didn't notice at all. Only now did she realize that there was someone else in the house. After entering the dining room, she realized that not only was the room big, but the dining room was also big. The long white dining table had a lot of exquisite food placed in the middle. It was placed on an exquisite plate. Zhang Haoze held Shi Mengwan's hand and sat down at the other end of the dining table. There are some good places of interest in Qing City. After dinner, didn't you say that you have a lot of work to deal with? Shi Mengwan's expression was a little cold. Since that's the case, then you should go deal with your work first. Zhang Haoze wasn't angry even though she had brushed him off. He was about to explain that he could spare a day when Tang Hua rushed in from outside. When he saw that Shi Mengwan was also there, he swallowed back the words he was about to say. President Zhang, Miss Shi. Shi Mengwan knew Tang Hua. This person had been with Zhang Haoze for an unknown period of time. She nodded as a greeting and watched Zhang Haoze get up. You eat first. I have something to do here. I'll take you out to play in the afternoon. Shi Mengwan didn't mind when she could go out at all. Now, she was so happy that she couldn't see Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze was busy until it was almost evening before he finished. Shi Mengwan didn't mind. She was thinking about some questions. For example, how could she leave this place and how could she have a showdown with Zhang Haoze? Before she could think clearly, Zhang Haoze had already finished his work. The sky gradually darkened. When Zhang Haoze appeared in front of Shi Mengwan again, Shi Mengwan had just finished scrolling through her WeChat moments. Looking at the pair of long legs in front of her, she raised her head. Zhang Haoze was looking at him. Come on, let's go out to eat. Go out to eat? Shi Mengwan didn't want to move. It's very cold outside. Actually, it wasn't particularly cold. It wasn't the coldest time in Qing City yet. It was just that Shi Mengwan had just flown over from the south, so she felt that it was especially cold here. Zhang Haoze held her hand, and only then did she realize that there was a fitting room on the other side of the room. Pulling open the door of one of the cabinets, he saw that it was filled with women's clothing. Everything was new, and the tags were still there. There were clothes for all seasons of the year. At the bottom, there were different kinds of shoes. Seeing so many women's clothes, Shi Mengwan turned her head to look at him. Her slightly furrowed brows carried some complicated emotions. Although these clothes were all her measurements, they were all standard sizes. So, aren't we going out to eat? Take a coat and let's go. Shi Mengwan couldn't muster up much interest, but Zhang Haoze seemed to be in a good mood. Seeing that she didn't make a move, he took the initiative to pick out a khaki-colored woolen coat and handed it to her. This one's not bad. Although Shi Mengwan wasn't very satisfied, she still put on the clothes. She found a pair of boots and put them on. Shi Mengwan followed Zhang Haoze out of the door. After getting into the car, Shi Mengwan wasn't in a good mood. Zhang Haoze, on the other hand, looked very relaxed. He reached out to hold her hand. Sorry, Tang Hua had something to talk to me about. I forgot the time and didn't accompany you. Are you angry? Shi Mengwan wasn't angry. She pulled back her hand, and Zhang Haoze went to hold her hand again. She avoided him again. This time, she accidentally touched a button and the car window rolled down. The cold wind blew, and Shi Mengwan closed the car window again. The car happened to make a turn at this time, so she didn't notice that in a villa next to her, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had just gotten out of the car. Su Qingsang happened to see her sitting in the car window and thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. Zhang Haoze's car circled around the city of Qing City. He seemed to be in a good mood today. He sat in the car and briefly introduced some of the scenic spots in Qing City to Shi Mengwan, as well as places to go. Unfortunately, Shi Mengwan wanted to tell him the truth and break up, so she was in low spirits and couldn't muster up any energy. In the end, Zhang Haoze thought that she was hungry, so he brought her to a place that was said to be very delicious roasted mutton. It was a typical northern courtyard house, but it was cleverly divided into private rooms. Zhang Haoze and Shi Mengwan were brought into the private room and sat down. Not long after they ordered, Zhang Haoze's phone rang. He glanced at Shi Mengwan and went out to answer the call. He didn't expect that as soon as he walked out, he would meet Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao, who had also come because of the fame. President Zhang? President Hua. The two men stood at the door of the private room and greeted each other. Shi Mengwan saw Su Qingsang at first glance just now. She was quite frightened and instinctively hid in the bathroom in the private room. Zhang Haoze was still chatting with Hua Jinyao outside. Shi Mengwan didn't care about the things that the men talked about at all. She only cared if Zhang Haoze would suddenly go crazy and ask them to come in for dinner. If Su Qingsang saw her, it would really be embarrassing. Fortunately, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao didn't meet any acquaintances here. They were just here to play. After greeting each other, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao went to the backyard to watch them roast the whole lamb. Shi Mengwan only felt that her back was covered in sweat. When Zhang Haoze entered the door, her face inevitably became a little gloomy. "I want to leave." Her voice was a little anxious. Looking at Zhang Haoze, she didn't have any intention of staying at all. "The lamb is already being roasted. It'll be ready soon." Zhang Haoze sat down beside her and looked at her pale face. Ever since he came to look for her again this time, it was rare for him to have the intention to tease her. "Are you going out now because you want to meet that good friend of yours?" Zhang Haoze. Su Qingsang hadn't returned to the private room yet. "Your good friend is visiting right now. If you go out now, I won't object, but I can't guarantee that you'll coincidentally meet her." Shi Mengwan's expression was very ugly. She glared at Zhang Haoze in front of her, wishing that she could stare a hole in his body. Zhang Haoze squeezed her hand again. "If you want to see her, it's easy. I can ask President Hua to bring her along. It'll be more lively with more people, don't you think?" It was his head. Shi Mengwan turned her face away. She didn't want to see this bastard at all. Naturally, the meal was a little tasteless. Shi Mengwan saw the picture of the roasted lamb posted by Su Qingsang on her WeChat moments. She had even circled her name on it, saying that the next time she came, she could treat her to a good taste. Shi Mengwan finally liked it and threw her phone to the side. That night, Zhang Haoze said that he wanted to take her to the hot spring. Shi Mengwan wasn't in the mood at all. "Zhang Haoze, when do you plan to let me go? Why are you in such a hurry? I said that there are many places worth visiting in Qing City. There's even a hot spring here. It's very comfortable to soak in a hot spring in this kind of weather. I'll get someone to arrange it tomorrow." How could Shi Mengwan still be in the mood to soak in a hot spring? She was in a hurry to return to Lin City now. At this moment, Zhang Haoze hugged her waist. "Pregnant women can't soak in a hot spring, so don't worry. It's unlikely that your good friend, Mrs. Hua, will meet you. If I return to Lin City, it's even more unlikely that she'll meet me." Shi Mengwan's words were a little mocking. Zhang Haoze acted as if he didn't hear her. He didn't think that something was wrong with Shi Mengwan because he saw her with Chen Feifei. He only thought that the reason why she was unhappy was because he brought her to Qing City without her consent, so she was throwing a tantrum. Seeing that she couldn't get through to him, Shi Mengwan decided not to say anything. She opened the door like a thief and called the waiter to confirm that Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were in their own private room. Then, she left in a hurry. Shi Mengwan didn't expect that what she was afraid of would come true. The more she didn't want to meet Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao, the more she would meet them. When she was pulled out of the door by Zhang Haoze and brought to the famous ancient city of Qing City, she actually met Su Qingsang again. She was a fashion designer, so she didn't have a fanatic interest in clothing stores. However, when it came to ethnic clothing stores with unique styles, they had no resistance. Therefore, along the way, even though she didn't want to be with Zhang Haoze at all, when she saw the ethnic clothing store in front of her, she still couldn't help but lift her foot and walk in. Her teacher had once told them that a good fashion design not only needed to be innovative, but also needed to be passed down. What was national was the world, and the characteristics of a nation also needed to be passed down. Shi Mengwan looked at the exquisite, handmade clothes and liked them very much. Zhang Haoze said at the right time, "If you like them, you can try them on." "Yes, miss, you have such a good figure. You will definitely look good in our clothes." The shop assistant said flattering words at the right time. Seeing that Shi Mengwan stood still, she added, "The clothes in our store usually only have one pair of each color and size. Although it's pretty much the same ethnic style, we've done our own processing. Miss, please try them on." It wasn't the peak season for tourism, so there weren't many people. Shi Mengwan looked at the obvious Uyghur costume and finally nodded. She didn't expect that when she went in to try on the clothes, it would be such a coincidence. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao just happened to enter the store. Speaking of which, Su Qingsang entered this store because of her. Although her belly was big and she couldn't wear it, Shi Mengwan could. Su Qingsang just wanted to buy a gift for Shi Mengwan. But she didn't expect to meet Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze also didn't expect that they and Hua Jinyao would meet in such a big city with a population of tens of millions. They were really fated. Hua Jinyao looked at him with a probing gaze. Zhang Haoze was quite calm and even started to chat with Hua Jinyao again. "President Zhang, are you alone?" "No, I'm with my girlfriend." Zhang Haoze openly admitted Shi Mengwan's identity. Of course, he didn't miss the flash of dissatisfaction in Su Qingsang's eyes. Su Qingsang naturally didn't like Zhang Haoze's behavior. One had to know that Zhang Haoze already had Chen Feifei as his fiancée, but now he had another girlfriend. She was willing to bet that his girlfriend was definitely not Chen Feifei. Su Qingsang wasn't interested in meddling in other people's business. She turned around, took a dress that she thought was suitable for Shi Mengwan, and went to the fitting room. On the other end, the shop assistant took the initiative to ask because Shi Mengwan hadn't come out. Zhang Haoze looked at Hua Jinyao, who had been staring at him curiously, and walked into the fitting room under the shop assistant's gaze. Chapter 701. Hearing Su Qingsang's voice outside, Shi Mengwan, who had already changed into a set of ethnic clothes, didn't have the courage to walk out at all. She never expected that she would meet Su Qingsang when Zhang Haoze dragged her out to the night market in the ancient city because she was in a bad mood. She didn't go out, and the shop assistant even started to ask her if she was feeling unwell. Could she be comfortable? Just yesterday, she heard Zhang Haoze call Chen Feifei. Chen Yongchang had already been sent on the plane by Zhang Haoze. Chen Yongchang's illegitimate son was also sent away. If it weren't for Zhang Haoze, it wouldn't have been so easy to achieve such a feat. However, that illegitimate son ran away after getting off the plane. Chen Yongchang was a key target of surveillance. But that illegitimate son wasn't. Chen Feifei was a little nervous when he ran away. She was more or less afraid that he would return to Lin City to take revenge on her. Right now, her foundation wasn't stable. If that person wanted to do something, although she wouldn't be powerless to resist, she would still be an obstacle. However, to Zhang Haoze, everything was under his control. Therefore, he told Chen Feifei not to think too much. That illegitimate son wouldn't be able to run far. He would catch him and lock him up with Chen Yongchang according to the original plan. In Zhang Haoze's heart, this was just a call under a transaction. It couldn't be any more normal. But with Shi Mengwan, it was completely different. It was just that her previous seeing is believing had turned into hearing is believing. Because of this reason, whether it was eating the roasted whole lamb or returning to the Cherry Blossom Manor at night, she didn't have a good expression towards Zhang Haoze. At night, she didn't even allow Zhang Haoze to touch her. Now that he touched her again, she had a huge reaction. The sense of shame that she was a mistress, and the resentment that Zhang Haoze had caused her to become like this was very obvious. Therefore, she didn't want to bother with Zhang Haoze at all. Including today, she was also forcefully dragged out by Jean Hausa to go shopping. If possible, she just wanted to return to Lin City as soon as possible. But in this situation, it was unknown if she could walk out of this small fitting room, let alone return to Lin City. Yet, Jean Hausa entered the door at this moment. She saw a very light smile on his face as he stared at the embarrassment on her face. "Are you okay? Okay?" Yes, in his heart, what did other people's feelings count for? She was angry in her heart, but Jean Hausa still had the ability to take advantage of her at this time. She was angry and reached out to push him without thinking. He advanced, she retreated, until there was nowhere to retreat. Afraid of being heard? What do you think would happen if I took you right here? You look very beautiful in this outfit. Scared? If you don't want me to take you here, then beg me. The things he did to her, the words that came out of his mouth sounded like a bastard to her. Jean Hausa, don't go too far. She hadn't forgotten about the apparel incident last year. She absolutely did not want to become the heroine of such an event. You don't have the slightest sincerity in your pleading. If you listen to me tonight, I'll let you go. How about it? Shi Mengwan had no choice but to lower her head. Please. In the end, Shi Mengwan was carried out of the fitting room by Jean Hausa, and he even, kindly, covered her face so that she wouldn't be seen by Hu Jinyao or Su Qingsang. However, Shi Mengwan heard the words, "Remember, you owe me again." This shameless bastard. If it weren't for him, how could she have fallen into such a situation? She still owed him again? How thick-skinned was this person? After leaving the ancient city, Shi Mengwan wasn't in the mood to shop anymore. She said that she wanted to go back. Jean Hausa didn't argue with her and brought her into the car. The majestic motorcade once again drove from the parking lot of the ancient city to Cherry Blossom Manor. It was night. Shi Mengwan, who had taken a shower, went to bed early. She wanted to avoid Jean Hausa, so she closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep before he finished his work. She thought that Jean Hausa would let her go if she fell asleep. But it turned out that she was too naive. In a daze, she felt someone pressing on her. That feeling reminded her of a big wolf dog she had raised when she was young. It always liked to pounce on her like this. "Big Yellow, get down," she said in a daze. She didn't forget to reach out and push Big Yellow away. This time, Big Yellow was very persistent. She pushed it a few times but couldn't push it down. Shi Mengwan called out again. "Big Yellow, stop fooling around." Jean Hausa propped himself up with one hand and looked at Shi Mengwan. She was really sleeping soundly. There was also Big Yellow. Jean Hausa's face darkened slightly when he heard the name of some kind of animal. He no longer hesitated and began to take off Shi Mengwan's clothes. There were naturally all kinds of pajamas in the cloakroom. Shi Mengwan chose the most conservative kind. The round-necked cotton pajamas wrapped tightly around her body. But even so, Jean Hausa still saw some of her sexuality. Shi Mengwan had an extremely charming face, but it didn't make her look so beautiful. Instead, the more he looked at her, the more beautiful she became. It was naturally troublesome to take off this set of pajamas. Jean Hausa tried it, but Shi Mengwan was sleeping soundly. His hands didn't stop moving. Just as he was about to lift the clothes up and help her take them off completely, she once again treated him as Big Yellow and pushed him down. Jean Hausa narrowed his eyes. He propped up his arm and stared at Shi Mengwan's hand for a long time. Finally, he got up and left. However, he didn't leave. Instead, he went to get a pair of scissors. The heater was turned on in the room, so he wasn't worried that Shi Mengwan would catch a cold. Jean Hausa used a pair of scissors to fry the comfortable but expensive pajamas just like that. The clothes were cut inch by inch, and the scenery that was previously tightly wrapped was naturally revealed. He cut very carefully and almost didn't touch Shi Mengwan's skin. Putting down the scissors, he continued to take off her pants. This was much easier. However, when he completely took it off, Shi Mengwan also woke up. She dreamed that Big Yellow refused to get off her body no matter what, but it even pulled up her blanket. At first, she tried to reach out to pull it, but later, she realized that she couldn't stop it. When she realized that it wasn't Big Yellow who was pulling her pants and woke up, she realized that other than a pair of underwear, she was almost completely naked. Her face turned red, and she instantly woke up. She glared at the culprit. "Jean Hausa, what are you doing?" Jean Hausa was about to continue tearing off the last small piece of cloth, but he didn't expect Shi Mengwan to wake up. When he met her angry eyes, he propped up his body again and moved closer to her. His lips pointed at her cheek. He kissed her lips, then moved his lips over and landed on her earlobe. He gently bit the small jade bead. "What do you think I'm doing?" You go down for me." "Go down?" Jean Hausa chuckled. His big hand picked up Shi Mengwan's black hair that was scattered on the pillow and sniffed. "Your memory isn't very good. Do you want me to remind you what you promised me?" "What?" Shi Mengwan woke up, but she was still in a daze. She didn't understand what he meant at all. "Previously in the ancient city, you promised me that you would listen to me when you came back." Shi Mengwan's expression froze. She suddenly reacted. In front of her, Jean Hausa was half lying there with one hand supporting his body. His burning gaze was like that of a wolf as he stared at her. How could such a Jean Hausa not make her afraid? Without thinking, she wanted to get off the bed. Jean Hausa easily wrapped his arms around her waist. "What? Do you want to go back on your word?" Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva. She really didn't know how to respond to this. "You're a scoundrel." At that time, she had no other choice. "Scoundrel? Who's a scoundrel?" Jean Hausa retracted his arm, and she pressed close to his body. He had just taken a shower and only had a bath towel on his body. Touching his slightly warm chest, Shi Mengwan felt a little thirsty. "Of course it's you. If it weren't for you, how could I?" He didn't finish his sentence, but Jean Hausa understood what he meant. He chuckled and raised her chin with his other hand. "So, you don't want to admit it now, do you?" "Who wanted to admit it?" Shi Mengwan pushed him, and Jean Hausa bit her lips. "It's fine if you don't want to admit it." He took a few steps back and his gaze fell on Shi Mengwan's face, as if he was thinking. "Speaking of which, I've worked with President Hua 2 or 3 times. The manor we're living in now was given by the Hua family's Tianyu group. We've worked together so many times, and we're living in a house developed by others, but I've never invited him here as a guest. It's really a little rude." Seeing that Shi Mengwan's little face was gradually turning pale, he slowly said, "Why don't I be the host tomorrow and invite President Hua and Mrs. Hua to my humble house? I can also be considered to be a host. What do you think?" "Not much?" This blatant threat made Shi Mengwan's expression very ugly. She glared at Jean Hausa in front of her, wishing that she could glare at his face. However, at this moment, she was lying down and wasn't wearing any clothes. No matter how she glared at him, she didn't have any imposing manner. Instead, to Jean Hausa, it was like seduction. "You don't object?" "Then it's settled." Jean Hausa got up and was about to get off the bed. "I'll get someone to arrange it now." "Enough." Shi Mengwan quickly sat up and reached out to grab his hand. Her face was very red. "What exactly do you want?" "I told you, you'll listen to me today." Shi Mengwan was extremely annoyed. Did she have any other choice now? She closed her eyes and nodded. She lay back on the bed. Jean Hausa narrowed his eyes at her expression, as if she was about to die. He stared at Shi Mengwan's face for a while, then suddenly got up and left. The sudden sound of footsteps leaving surprised Shi Mengwan. She really didn't understand why he would be so kind as to let her go. She lowered her head and looked at herself. She seemed to have just realized her current state, so she quickly pulled up the blanket to cover her body. She curled up and wanted to find her clothes, but she suspected that Jean Hauser wouldn't let her go so easily. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Jean Hauser to return. This time, he had something in his hand. Shi Mengwan, who heard the voice, turned around and saw the thing in his hand. Her little face was slightly stunned, and she just stared at him blankly. Today is a good day to remember. Jean Hauser took a few steps forward and walked to the bedside. He looked at Shi Mengwan, and his eyes carried a depth that she could see at a glance. So, let's drink to celebrate. As he spoke, he had already placed the 2 opened bottles of wine in his hands on the bedside table. There were also 2 wine glasses placed there. Shi Mengwan swallowed her saliva. What was this guy trying to do? Realizing the danger, Shi Mengwan's first reaction was to escape. Jean Hauser didn't give her a chance. The moment she got up, he held her in his arms. He imprisoned her body in his arms and sat on the bed, hugging Shi Mengwan, who was almost naked. Didn't you say that you'll listen to me today? Why are you running? How could Shi Mengwan not want to run? She was almost sure that what Jean Hauser wanted her to do later would definitely make her feel very ashamed and unwilling. She didn't answer, and Jean Hauser didn't force her. He was in a good mood today. He picked up the bottle of wine and poured the 2 glasses. He picked up one of the glasses and handed it to Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan looked at the wine glass and shook her head. I don't know how to drink. Even if she did, she didn't want to drink it now. The situation in front of her was too dangerous. Although she agreed to listen to Jean Hauser, she still wanted to have a chance to breathe. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes and didn't force her. He directly drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. Just as Shi Mengwan thought that he was going to let her go, he pressed the back of her head and aimed at her lips. When Shi Mengwan got up from the bed in the morning, she hadn't recovered from that shameful and secret lust. Her limbs were weak, and her body was weak. The bedding on the bed had been changed long ago. Not only the bed sheets and quilt covers, but even the mattress underneath had been changed. When she thought about how Jean Hauser had shamelessly asked someone to come up and change the bedding after carrying her into the bathroom last night, Shi Mengwan wished she could find a hole to hide in. She didn't want to go downstairs at all, nor did she want to go out. Feeling someone come in, she buried her face in the quilt. But very quickly, the quilt was lifted. Get up and eat. Jean Hauser sat by the bed and looked at her. The last thing she wanted to see was Jean Hauser. She turned around and didn't look at him at all. I can't eat. Wan. Before his hand could touch her shoulder, she had already waved it away. Such a simple action made her body ache. It could be seen how much someone had gone overboard yesterday. Jean Hauser, I want to go back to Lin City. She had had enough. She had been here for 3 days. On the first day, she had taken a quick stroll around the streets and glanced around. On the second day, she hadn't even walked 1/3 of the ancient city trip when she gave up because she met Su Qingsang. There was no need to mention today. Because of Jean Hauser's craziness yesterday, her waist was now soft. Not to mention going out to play, she found it difficult to go downstairs. You haven't played yet. Why are you going back? Jean Hauser didn't understand why she was throwing a tantrum again. She had clearly agreed to stay for a few days. When he met Shi Mengwan's mocking gaze, Jean Hauser's face heated up and he suddenly reacted. Sorry. He reached out to touch her cheek. His strength was gentle. I lost control yesterday. It wasn't just yesterday that he lost control. Shi Mengwan glared at him and wanted to bite him in her heart. Jean Hauser, no matter what you say, I have to go back to Lin City. You arrange it. It wasn't that she didn't want to book her own plane ticket home, but Jean Hauser, this extremely shameless person, had taken away her ID. She only found out later that she could use her bag as she pleased, but the ID inside had long been taken away by Jean Hauser. How could she return to Lin City in such a situation? Can't you play here for 2 more days? When Jean Hauser spoke, he happened to meet her angry eyes. He held her hand. You're not feeling well today. Rest for a day. We'll go out tomorrow. No need. She wasn't in the mood to play with Jean Hauser. If I stay here any longer, I'll lose my life. Not only was she angry, but she was also embarrassed. Last night, she almost died in his hands a few times. How could she dare to stay? Moreover, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were still in Qing City. Qing City wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. There were only so many places she could play. If she met them again, she really wouldn't want to live anymore. Jean Hauser frowned and looked at the resistance on her face. He knew that he had indeed gone overboard last night. It was just that the feeling was too beautiful. He really couldn't control himself. The atmosphere was silent for a moment. Shi Mengwan said again, I want to go back to Lin City. Jean Hauser looked at her as if he was looking at a willful child. When Shi Mengwan said that she wanted to go back for the third time, he finally reacted. I'll get someone to send you back tomorrow. Shi Mengwan didn't believe that he would be so easy to talk to. As she wished, Jean Hauser added, but you have to accompany me on another trip tonight. I'm not going. You'll like it, Jean Hauser said very gently. You were too tired yesterday. I'll take you to the hot spring tonight. Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser. The person in front of her wasn't as evil and perverted as he was last night. He looked at her with a very focused gaze. Not only was he focused, but she also found her own shadow in it. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She turned her face away to avoid Jean Hauser's gaze and told herself. These were all false appearances. He was a bastard who had a foot in both camps, a scumbag. Jean Hauser had no way of knowing what Shi Mengwan was thinking. He was also very free today. To him, his rare patience and good temper were all used on Shi Mengwan. At night, he really brought Shi Mengwan to the hot spring. As if he knew the trauma he had caused to her yesterday, Jean Hauser didn't do anything this time. The hot spring water made Shi Mengwan feel much more comfortable. After returning to Cherry Blossom Villa to rest, she slept until midnight. She was once again woken up by Jean Hauser's blood on the day of the accident. The nightmare came again, and this time, she woke up directly. Wan, are you okay? Jean Hauser slept with her. Shi Mengwan shook her head. She hadn't had this dream for some time. She had no time to care about Jean Hauser's concern. Shi Mengwan hurriedly went into the bathroom to wash her face and calm down. Her good friend, who she met once a month, came as scheduled. Shi Mengwan looked at herself in the mirror and suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. She wasn't pregnant. Jean Hauser's misdeeds these few times had made her confused. There were even a few times when he didn't take any precautions, and she didn't have the rationality to remind him. Now that her period had finally come, she wasn't pregnant. That was good enough. She came out of the bathroom and had just laid down when Jean Hauser's hand came over. He saw that her mood wasn't right just now, so he knew that she had a nightmare. He wanted to ask her how she was. My period is here. Shi Mengwan closed her eyes and didn't look at him at all. Don't touch me. Jean Hauser's hand stopped for a moment. He looked at the resistance on Shi Mengwan's face and didn't understand why she would lose her temper again. I just wanted to ask if you had a nightmare. She didn't have to treat him like a beast. Every time he touched her, he wanted to have sex with her, right? Thank you for your concern. Shi Mengwan still didn't open her eyes, and her voice was even colder than before. I didn't have a nightmare. I'm fine. Save your concern for someone you should care about more. Don't think that she didn't know that he had contacted Chen Feifei when he was soaking in the hot spring tonight. Since he couldn't bear to part with her, why was he putting on an act in front of her now? He didn't think he was hypocritical, but she found it disgusting. Jean Hauser contacted Chen Feifei today because his people had found the illegitimate son who had run away. He had also sent him to Chen Yongchang. He had arranged the rest of the matters. For the time being, other than the matter of the Chen family's company in Lin City, He had nothing to do with Chen Feifei. He didn't know that Shi Mengwan had heard his call. That was why she didn't like him so much now. He suddenly heard her say something about someone he should care about more. He didn't react at all to who she was talking about. The person I care about the most is you. His words could be considered as a confession. Shi Mengwan didn't believe a single word. Just now, he had been persuading Miss Chen on the phone not to worry, but now he turned around and told her that the person he cared about the most was her? Who would believe him? She didn't believe him anyway. Shi Mengwan rested for a night and didn't stay for another day. The next day, as soon as Zhang Haoze arranged the plane, she immediately flew back to Lin City. Sitting on the plane, she looked at the empty seat next to her. This time, Zhang Haoze didn't return to Lin City with her, which made her feel very unreal. Zhang Haoze really let her go home just like that? He didn't follow her, and he didn't send anyone to keep an eye on her? This really didn't make sense. But Shi Mengwan didn't care about him. Maybe Zhang Haoze was satisfied after that night and was tired of it. Maybe he finally decided to be kind and let her go. Thinking of this, Shi Mengwan relaxed. Thinking of what Zhang Haoze did that night, she still felt a little uncomfortable. But this kind of uneasiness was insignificant compared to the freedom and equal relationship she needed to enjoy. No matter how overbearing Zhang Haoze was or how much he pestered her, it was over for them now, right? For the next month, Zhang Haoze didn't come to look for her, which confirmed her guess. Good, very good. Zhang Haoze finally let her go. Chapter 702. In a sanatorium on the outskirts of Qing City. Uncle Qi stood in front of the door and looked at Zhang Haoze with disapproval in his eyes. Young master, now that the Zhang family is in your hands, why do you get out of the way? Zhang Haoze's voice was extremely indifferent. He looked at Uncle Qi, who was standing in front of him, with an ice-cold gaze. Uncle Qi gritted his teeth and was extremely regretful. He still wanted to stop him, but the people beside Zhang Haoze had already stopped him. Just like that, Zhang Haoze pushed open the door behind him and walked in. The environment of the room inside was very good. It wasn't like an ordinary apartment for the elderly. The room was very big, and there was a bed in the middle. Zhang Kun was sleeping on the bed. There was a wheelchair near the bed. It was already winter in Qing City, and the wind was cold outside. Because of the previous stroke, Zhang Kun couldn't move half of his body. But he was still conscious and could still move. When he saw Zhang Haoze enter the door, his eyes widened. He looked at him as if he was looking at an enemy. You, after 2 strokes in a row, Zhang Kun's voice was hoarse. He raised a hand to point at Zhang Haoze. But he only had one hand that he could move, and it was trembling when he raised it. This made him even angrier, and the expression on his face looked very ferocious. Zhang Haoze didn't notice the gloomy expression on his face. He walked to the bed, pulled out a chair beside him, and sat down. His legs were elegantly folded together. You, be asterisk starred. Zhang Haoze looked at him and said the last 2 words for him, let's change the words. You have to know that this be asterisk starred is also your seed. Zhang Kun's face had already turned purplish red. Zhang Haoze sneered. Isn't it? If you didn't give birth to my father, where would I come from? He chuckled and supported his chin with one hand. So, aren't you the B** starred? Zhang Kun was panting heavily. Zhang Haoze looked at his agitated expression. By the way, you probably don't know, right? The Zhang family is now in my hands. Nothing made Zhang Kun more angry and resentful than this. When he saw Zhang Haoze enter the door and knew that Zhang Haoze wasn't dead, he already knew that something must have gone wrong. Now, Zhang Haoze's words made him realize that someone had lied to him. Speaking of which, I really have to thank your good subordinates. If Uncle Qi hadn't handed the Zhang family to me, how could I have gotten the Zhang family so easily? Ah. Zhang Kun couldn't even speak fluently. He pointed at Zhang Haoze, his eyes full of resentment. About 4 or 5 months. Do you know what I've done in the past 4 or 5 months? Jean Hauser didn't need his response. He only came today to let Jean Kuan know what he was capable of. That Jean-y you're interested in. Last month, he made a mistake in his investment and then accidentally slept with Brother Rong's woman. He's being hunted down by Brother Rong. You, Jean Kuan's face had already begun to turn green. Jean Hauser frowned slightly. Logically speaking, Jean-y is a member of the Jean family. Brother Rong has to give the Jean family some face. But I told him that he didn't need to give me face, and that he should deal with it as he should. Jean Kuan covered his heart with one hand. He couldn't even say the word you now. As for Jean-y's father, Jean Ji, because his son was being hunted down by Brother Rong, he looked for Brother Rong. He wanted to take revenge on Brother Rong, but he accidentally died in Brother Rong's hands. TSK, how pitiful. Jean Kuan had already begun to pant heavily, and his face turned from green to black. Oh right, there's also Jean Li and Jean Yang. I asked them to develop a branch in South Africa. You know, we don't have a branch in South Africa. The two of them are the same. Their tempers are too bad. They are very arrogant in the local area, and they have conflicts with the locals. Now, one of them has 2 broken legs, and the other has a pair of broken hands. How tragic. Jean Kuan raised his hand again, wanting to point at Jean Hauser. Jean Hauser laughed. Your other son, Jean Quan, was scared out of his wits. He brought his 2 stupid sons, Jean Cheng and Jean Shi. He went back to his father-in-law's side. He took the initiative to call me and told me that he would never take a step into Qing City in his life. He just asked me to spare their families' lives. Look, Min Quan is my uncle after all. Since he begged me like this, of course I agreed. It's just that his wife thinks he's useless, and now she's divorcing him every day. Last time, she accidentally fell down the stairs when the 2 of them were fighting. It's said that she suffered a fracture and is still in the hospital. This has nothing to do with me. Jean Kuan put down his hand again, and his body was half curled up. He looked at Jean Hauser with red eyes, but he couldn't say a word. Oh right, after saying so much, I haven't talked about Jean Lai, who is currently staying in the Jean family's mansion. Jean Kuan's eyes were about to pop out, and the veins on his forehead were popping out. Don't worry, his hands and feet are still there. Other than not being able to go out and not having freedom, there's nothing bad about it. It's just that his wife isn't very good. Every day, she looks at Jean Li and Jean Yang's broken hands and feet and curses me 800 times a day. Jean Kuan's face was already full of pain. He was originally half sitting, but now his body was curled up. His face, which was already covered with age spots, was full of pain. You must be wondering why I didn't do anything to the couple, right? Don't worry, I like to take it slow. Keep them and slowly torture them. Jean Kuan was already speechless. He looked like he was about to suffocate in pain. Jean Hauser stood up at this moment and looked down at the old man who was already old and didn't have the ability to resist. Do you hate me? That's right. Don't worry, I won't let you die. Here, I will invite the best medical team to save your life. I want you to watch how the Jean family flourishes in my hands, and how it will be destroyed bit by bit in my hands. Looking at Jean Kuan, who had already begun to roll his eyes and was about to faint, Jean Hauser's gaze was cold. When you shot my mother, you should have thought of today. Before Jean Kuan lost consciousness, he bent down. Back then, you really should have killed me as well. After saying this, Jean Hauser stood up and left without looking back. Jean Kuan completely fainted. Jean Hauser left the room and asked his men to loosen the restraints on Uncle Chi. Uncle Chi didn't even have the time to say anything harsh. He hurriedly ran into the room. Master Kuan, how are you? Jean Hauser waved his hand, and doctors and nurses immediately rushed in. He glanced at the doctor who was walking at the back. Keep him alive. Don't let him die. I want him to live a little longer. When he left the sanatorium, Jean Hauser was in a very good mood. Tang Hua looked at the joy on his face. Boss, are we going back to the company now or go to Lin City? In the few months since he took over the Jean family, those people had been playing small tricks and making big moves. He had escaped death a few times and averted danger a few times. Last time, he was almost injured and didn't even have a good New Year. In such a situation, he didn't have the time to look for Shi Mengwan. The last time Shi Mengwan said that she wanted to return to Lin City, he let her go for her safety. Now that the problem was almost solved, of course he had to go and bring him back. Yes. Tang Hua nodded, but he suddenly thought of something else. Oh right, boss, President Hua's wife gave birth to a pair of twins. In 2 days, there will be a full moon banquet. The invitation has already been sent over. Mrs. Hua and Miss Shi have such a good relationship, so Miss Shi will definitely attend. Why don't we go to Rong City first? Otherwise, if we go to Lin City and Miss Shi goes to Rong City, Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes. Then let's go to Rong City. Help me prepare a generous gift. Not to mention the cooperation with Jean Hauser. With Shi Mengwan and Su Qingsang's relationship, there would be plenty of interaction in the future. Since that was the case, of course, he had to prepare a generous gift. Okay. Jean Hauser relaxed and thought of Shi Mengwan's beautiful face. With her personality, he believed that she would be angry with him for not looking for her for so long. When they met tomorrow, perhaps he should coax her. Jean Hauser, who had solved most of the trouble, was already thinking about how to coax Shi Mengwan. The full moon banquet of the Hua family's twins was indeed extremely lively. When Jean Hauser arrived in Rong City, he asked Tang Hua to check. Shi Mengwan had come the day before yesterday. Moreover, she was staying at the Hua family's house with Su Qingsang. Jean Hauser wouldn't go to the Hua family to look for her. After enduring for a day, he finally had the chance to see Shi Mengwan today. He had been around Rong City a lot these few years, and many people knew him. Especially recently, the Jean family in Qing City had been in turmoil. Jean Hauser had almost become a popular figure in Qing City. After greeting a few people who had worked with him before and having to socialize, he finally saw Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan didn't see him. At this moment, she was in front of Su Qingsang and looking at the baby in her arms. Her eyes were full of smiles, and her gaze at the baby was very gentle. He had never seen Shi Mengwan like this before. Jean Hauser was just about to go forward when a man came. Wan Xianyang, Hua Jinyao's childhood friend. The way he looked at Shi Mengwan made him very unhappy. He knew that Shi Mengwan didn't like Wan Xianyang, but having such a man appear by Shi Mengwan's side from time to time was enough to make him unhappy. In the past, he had no choice. In order to destroy the Jean family, he had to endure it. But now, he didn't need to endure it. Naturally, he didn't need to watch Wan Xianyang fawn over his woman. Fortunately, before he could go forward, Shi Mengwan had already taken the initiative to stand far away. Then, she excused herself to go to the bathroom and left. He followed behind her. He didn't expect that Shi Mengwan would send Wan Xianyang away, and then Li Junsheng would come. Li Junsheng was a person who was even more difficult to deal with than Wan Xianyang. In the past 2 years, he had made a lot of moves in Lin City. He had pulled down a group of people and helped another group of people. The key was that such a person actually didn't have any money on his hands. And he clearly saw it. Li Junsheng's eyes revealed interest in Shi Mengwan. That was really not a good thing for him. 10 minutes later, he looked at Shi Mengwan, who was suppressed under him. She was clearly very surprised to see him. But the surprise was only for a moment. Her eyes quickly revealed other emotions. Are you crazy? Is this the men's bathroom? Looking at the accusation in her eyes, he thought about how she was able to smile at Li Junsheng just now. In the end, Jean Hauser couldn't help it. He lowered his head and kissed her lips in a very domineering manner. Ever since they parted that day, the two of them hadn't seen each other for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't want to look for her, or even that he didn't want to contact her. It was just that the situation in the Jean family was complicated. Not to mention those illegitimate children that Jean Kuan had admitted, there were also many people with the surname Jean that he hadn't made public. Although Jean Kuan didn't recognize these people, he was still somewhat related to them. After all these years, Jean Ji, Jean Quan, Jean Lai, and the others had their own forces in the Jean family in Qing City. He had made a deal with Uncle Qi, but it didn't mean that he had made a deal with other people. It was better to be safe than sorry. In order not to put her in any danger, he could only suppress the urge to see her. Jean Hausa. Let go of me. When he let go of her, the first thing she said made him unhappy again. She would always let go of him, break up, not want to see him, and resist. But she could be 30% smiling and 70% gentle to other men. The longing that he hadn't seen her for a long time, coupled with the stimulation of seeing her chatting and laughing with other men, made him a little speechless. Wan Xianyang, Hua Jinyao's childhood friend. The second young master of the Wan family. Now, he runs 2 antique shops. Among them, Gu Longxuan's business is the biggest. Every year, it brings Wan Xianyang hundreds of millions of profits. This was only Gu Longxuan's shop. As for the other businesses, this second young master of the Wan family was also doing quite well. As for the other one, Li Junsheng, the mayor of Lin City. His family has been in the right place for generations. Li Junsheng is young, but he is already the leader of Lin City. In the past year, through the investment of a master, he has developed and renovated the old city area of Lin City. He is very popular in Lin City. I didn't expect you to be so good at seducing men. You can actually attract the favor of 2 men like this in one go. Seeing Shi Mengwan angrily slap him, Jean Hausa grabbed her hand. Are you angry? He should be the one who was angry, right? Why didn't she know how to keep her distance from other men? Shi Mengwan wasn't just angry. She was simply furious. Jean Hausa, not every man is like you. Like me? What do you mean? Jean Hausa leaned over and leaned close to Shi Mengwan's face. His breath pointed at her cheek. Don't you like people like me? Who likes you? Isn't it you? It was said that men didn't recognize people after getting out of bed. This woman in front of her was the one who didn't recognize people after getting out of bed, right? Who was the one who kept calling me husband last time? Who was the one who said she loved me? Who liked me? Who was the one who kept asking me to F***CKU? Shi Mengwan's hand was grabbed by Jean Hausa, but she was so angry that her face turned red. If this man hadn't shamelessly used such a method to force her last time, why would she have said so many shameless words? When she thought about the last time the two of them had sex, she couldn't bear to look back at what this man had done to her. Every time she thought about it, she would be so embarrassed that she couldn't show her face. Now, he had to bring it up again. Shi Mengwan couldn't hit him, so she was angry. She simply moved her mouth forward and bit his arm with all her might. She bit very hard. The grievance of being entangled with Jean Hausa for more than a year, the humiliation of being bullied by him again and again, and the shame of being forced to be a mistress. At this moment, it all turned into the strength of her teeth. The more she bit, the harder she bit. She even tasted the taste of blood. She didn't let go, so Jean Hausa let her bite. It wasn't until she bit her lips until they were numb and she couldn't bite anymore that she had no choice but to retreat. He finally hooked up her chin and made her look at him. How ruthless. He looked at the blood on her lips and gently wiped it away. The words that came out of his mouth made Shi Mengwan want to bite him again. Fortunately, you bit my hand. If you bit my brother, you won't have any happiness in your next life. Shi Mengwan opened her mouth to bite him again, but he hugged her. At the same time, he lowered his head and gave her another long kiss. When he kissed her until she couldn't breathe, he finally let go of her and hugged her limp body in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed the top of her head. My hand is so hard. It's a waste of energy for you to bite me. You'll even make your teeth hurt. He leaned close to her ear and gently nibbled on her earlobe. If you really like biting people so much, I'd rather you bite another part of me. Understanding the hint in Zhang Hao's words, Shi Mengwan thought of the embarrassing scene from last time. She couldn't stay any longer. She pushed him away forcefully. Zhang Hao hugged her waist and hugged her again. It's boring to participate in such a banquet. Why don't we leave first? If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm not leaving. She especially liked Su Qingsang's pair of twins. She couldn't wait to hug them for a while longer. She didn't want to leave just like that. You like children? Zhang Hao looked at her and knew what she was thinking. If you really like them so much, let's have one too. Have one? Shi Mengwan suddenly turned around and looked at him. Her eyes were filled with mockery. Zhang Hao, you said you want to have a child with me? Yes. Can't I? Do you know what it means for you to have a child with me? What? The child has to take my surname and enter the Shi family tree. Shi Mengwan sneered. Her face was deliberately embarrassed. More importantly, I'm not even married to you. Why should I have a child with you? You want to marry me? Zhang Hao looked at her. There was a look in his eyes that Shi Mengwan had never seen before. Do you dare? The sarcasm on Shi Mengwan's face deepened. Do you dare to marry me? Zhang Hao, do you dare to make it public? Do you dare to let others know that I'm your girlfriend? Instead of hiding and sneaking around like before. Did he dare? Zhang Hao looked at the obvious provocation in her eyes and reached out to pull her hand. You want to make it public? You want to marry me? You want others to know that I'm your boyfriend? Yes. I do. But do you dare? She had had enough. She had had enough of him coming and going as he pleased. She didn't want to endure it anymore. He had taken everything from her, but he could still let other women get close to him. More importantly, she had had enough of him having a fiancé. And she had to bear the blame of being the third party. She had had enough of all of this. She had already given him many chances, time and again, over and over again. Now, she didn't want to give him another chance. This was the last time. If he couldn't do it, then he would never come looking for her again. This wasn't in Qing City, nor was it in Lin City. This was Rong City. Hua Jinyao's territory. And she believed that with Hua Jinyao's ability and her relationship with Su Qingsang, Hua Jinyao would definitely be able to protect her from being harassed by Zhang Hao. Seeing that Zhang Hao didn't say anything, Shi Mengwan sneered and asked again, do you dare? Zhang Hao looked at her with a rare smile on his face. He suddenly grabbed her hand and led her outside. Shi Mengwan was shocked by his sudden action. She followed behind him and the two of them left the men's bathroom together. Coincidentally, someone was coming over to use the bathroom. Seeing a man and a woman leaving together, the other party's gaze made Shi Mengwan feel extremely embarrassed again. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. She glared at Zhang Hao hatefully. It was all his. Every time she met him, nothing good happened. He always embarrassed her. While she was distracted, Zhang Hao had already brought her to the hall. Shi Mengwan, who realized what Zhang Hao was going to do, had no time to retreat. Just like that, she held hands with Zhang Hao and appeared in front of everyone. Su Qingsang had just coaxed Nian Nian and was about to carry her to the nanny when she saw Zhang Hao and Su Qingsang coming out hand in hand. Her eyes widened as if her eyeballs were about to fall out. Hua Jinyao happened to be surrounded by a group of childhood friends. He held her in his arms and thought about it. Wan Xianyang was extremely envious. He was about to coax Hua Jinyao into giving him a hug when he saw it from the corner of his eyes. His eyes widened for a moment. The moment he saw Zhang Hao, he remembered who this person was. He had no choice. Who asked Jean Hausa to be too famous in the past few months? In terms of methods and scheming, who could compare to Jean Hausa? Just based on the methods he used to deal with his cousins and uncles in the Jean family, this person made people feel a chill run down their spines. But now, such a chilling man was holding a woman's hand with a gentle expression. It was too late for Shi Mengwan to retract her hand. Su Qingsang had already seen it. Jean Hausa held her hand and walked toward Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang really didn't have a good impression of Jean Hausa. Last year, when she went to Qing City to play, she saw him with another woman. He originally had a fiancée in Lin City. Later, when she saw what he did, she disliked him even more. Even if Jean Hausa and Hua Jinyao had business dealings, that was only between men. From her point of view, she really didn't like people like Jean Hausa. Mrs. Hua. Jean Hausa put his arm around Shi Mengwan's waist and nodded slightly. Thank you for taking care of Wanwan these few days. Thank you. Su Qingsang blinked. She looked at Jean Hausa and then at Shi Mengwan and suddenly smiled. President Jean, you're welcome. Wanwan is my best friend. It's my duty to take care of her. However, I don't understand President Jean's thank you. May I know in what capacity, President Jean, are you thanking me? Wanwan's boyfriend and future husband, Jean Hausa announced. He tightened his arm around Shi Mengwan's waist and let her get closer to him. When Wanwan and I get married, please come to the wedding, Mrs. Hua. This was really a smooth answer. Shi Mengwan looked at him, the expression on her face very interesting. Chapter 703. But when she thought that what Jean Hausa said might be true, her heart suddenly beat fast. Su Qingsang was already married and had a child. Even though she used to be a little cold. After these days, she had changed a lot. She looked at the seriousness in Jean Hausa's eyes and stood up. Sorry, Mr. Jean, I have a few words to say to Wanwan. Mrs. Hua, if you have anything to say, you can say it directly. Wanwan is thin-skinned. I'm afraid she will be shy. Su Qingsang almost choked on her own saliva. Shi Mengwan was thin-skinned? When the two of them were together in the past, which one of them was the one who would talk dirty at the slightest disagreement? Now Jean Hausa was telling her that Shi Mengwan was thin-skinned? The corner of her mouth twitched and she glanced at Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan was really a little embarrassed. She glared at Jean Hausa. Qingsang, I'll tell you later. Wait a minute. Su Qingsang pulled her body to her side, leaned close to her ear, and said very softly, what's going on? Don't ask. Shi Mengwan was really embarrassed. I'll tell you later. Okay. Today was the big day of the twins, so it wasn't convenient for her to keep pestering Shi Mengwan. However, if he forced you, you can tell me. I'll let Hua Jinyao deal with him. Su Qingsang said this in a low voice, but Jean Hausa heard it clearly. Qingsang. Shi Mengwan's expression was a little subtle. Su Qingsang patted her hand and stood up like a family member to look at Jean Hausa. President Jean seems to have a fiancé? Yes. Although Jean Hausa and Chen Feifei hadn't been officially engaged, everyone in Lin City knew about it. We've broken off the engagement. Really? Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows. Why haven't I heard about it? How could such a sensational thing as breaking off the engagement be brushed aside so easily? The two sides have made a private agreement, but it hasn't been announced yet. It hasn't been announced, which means that President Jean still has a fiancé. Su Qingsang spoke impolitely. If that's the case, how can you claim that you're Wanwan's boyfriend? What do you think of Wanwan? Qingsang. Shi Mengwan didn't want Su Qingsang and Jean Hausa to have a conflict now. Stop it. How can I not tell you? Some things have to be clarified. Su Qingsang was extremely protective. How can you believe him just because he said something nice? Mrs. Hua, my engagement with Chen Feifei has long been dissolved. This matter, after I ask him, will be made public. As for me and Wan Wan, my feelings for Wan Wan are naturally serious. Don't worry, I won't let her down. Anyone can say nice things. Not many can do it. Su Qingsang wasn't targeting Zhang Haoze, but this man had a bad record. If he wasn't with Shi Mengwan, no matter how many women he had relationships with, it was none of her business. However, her friendship with Shi Mengwan was different, so she naturally couldn't bear to see her good sister being bullied. Say something nice, I don't know how to do it. But I think I can prove it with my actions. Zhang Haoze was still holding Shi Mengwan's hand. Shi Mengwan turned to look at him because of his words. His overly sincere eyes made her a little moved for a moment. Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but someone else came. The Hua family had many relatives and friends in the business world. As Hua Jinyao's wife, there were naturally many people who came to get close to her. Su Qingsang didn't have time to pay attention to Shi Mengwan, so she gave her a look, signaling her to talk later. However, if she was a little later, Shi Mengwan would be taken away by Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze didn't like such occasions. After taking Shi Mengwan to the public, he stayed for a while and left with her. The hotel that Zhang Haoze booked was in the presidential suite upstairs. He took Shi Mengwan directly upstairs. Shi Mengwan actually hadn't recovered from Zhang Haoze's action of revealing her identity just now. When she was taken upstairs, Zhang Haoze kissed her lips. When he kissed her, he didn't forget to take off her red coat. The sleeveless dress underneath was revealed. He held her waist and brought her into his arms. He had wanted to do this when he was in the men's bathroom. As he kissed her, Shi Mengwan gradually came back to her senses. Just as his hand was about to continue, she grabbed his hand. Zhang Haoze stopped and pressed his forehead against hers. Wan Wan, the clear breath on his body brushed against her face, and she almost fell into his bewitching trap again. Blinking, she pressed her hands against his chest to calm herself down. Zhang Haoze, you said that you broke off the engagement with Qin Feifei? Yes. Just didn't make it public? Yes. Then, did Qin Feifei tacitly agree to this? What did he mean? I mean, you unilaterally want to break off the engagement with her, or did she agree? Of course, she agreed. He said it seriously, but Shi Mengwan didn't really believe him. This matter had always been a thorn in her heart. She couldn't believe him so easily. Seeing that she didn't speak, Zhang Haoze lowered his head and was about to kiss her again. Shi Mengwan didn't give him a chance. She stubbornly pressed her hand against his chest. Since that's the case, then wait until the news of you breaking off the engagement is made public before you get together. Zhang Haoze looked at the determination on her face and felt a headache coming on. You don't believe me? I can't find a reason to believe you. Shi Mengwan bit her lip. She looked at Zhang Haoze with clear eyes, but there was a hint of sadness in them. Zhang Haoze, I believed you time and time again. I don't want to believe you now. Zhang Haoze looked at the anger on her face. So what do you mean now? Nothing. Shi Mengwan waved his hand away. When can you get Qin Feifei to publicly stand up and admit to breaking off the engagement? I'll consider getting back together with you. The word she used was consider. Even though Zhang Haoze had revealed his identity like this, she had to think more after calming down. Where was this? This was Rong City. Not to mention that it was 108,000 miles away from Lin City. It would take a few hours to get to Qing City. Zhang Haoze publicly announced their relationship in Rong City. On the surface, it looked like he was finally willing to give her an open identity. But what was the truth? After returning to Lin City, he could still continue to be Qin Feifei's fiancée. And as long as the engagement wasn't broken off, she would still be a shameful mistress who couldn't see the light of day. She was calm enough and rational enough now. She didn't want to believe Zhang Haoze's words anymore. Even if at that moment, Zhang Haoze, who brought her to the public, made her heart beat so much that she wanted to throw everything away and follow him. But that was all. she wouldn't believe him anymore. Her heart was already cold. Her expression was determined. At this moment, Jean Hausa understood that what she said was true. Wan, it's getting late. I'll go downstairs first. Shi Mengwan retreated from his arms, lowered her head, and picked up the small coat on the ground. Wan, don't go. He went to pull her hand. After not seeing her for a while, he didn't believe that she didn't miss him. Jean Hausa. Shi Mengwan gently pulled his hand away. You know what I want. If you can't give it to me, don't come looking for me again. After saying this, Shi Mengwan left without looking back. Chen Feifei looked at Jean Hausa in front of her. After not seeing him for a few months, he seemed to be different again. However, she really wasn't in the mood to care about how Jean Hausa was doing. Brother Hao, you came back at the right time. I'm in trouble. What? Jean Hausa was about to say that the Qin Corporation had been on the right track recently and asked Chen Feifei to publicly break off the engagement with him. However, her words made him stop for a moment. No matter what the reason was, when Chen Feifei was in trouble, he would help her. Qin Jie's mother is here. Jean Hausa was stunned for a few seconds before he remembered who Qin Jie was. He was Qin Yongchang's illegitimate child outside. He would be following Qin Yongchang and Qin Yongchang to retire in a small town in Canada. His mother? After Jean Hausa found out about Qin Jie, he specially checked his mother's information. According to the information, the other party took care of Qin Jie for a period of time after giving birth to him. Later, for some unknown reason, she left on her own. As for where she went, the information didn't find it. At that time, Jean Hausa didn't care about this. Therefore, he didn't continue to investigate. Is there a problem? The woman surnamed Liang is Qin Jie's mother. I don't know where she got a will made by my father, but she said that the Qin Corporation belongs to Qin Jie. Although Chen Feifei said this, she knew very well that the will was real. Qin Yongchang really wrote such a will, and he really planned to give the Qin Corporation to Qin Jie. When Chen Feifei thought of this, she felt upset. Will? Jean Hausa was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Qin Yongchang to have such a trick up his sleeve. All of it? Yes. All of it, all of the Qin Corporation's shares. They all belong to Qin Jie. When Chen Feifei said this, she sneered. And I can get all of the real estate and funds under his name. It looked like a lot, but in reality? Compared to the Qin clan, it was just a small sorcerer meeting a great sorcerer. She really didn't expect her good father to be so biased. The father-daughter relationship of more than 20 years seemed to be fake now. You've checked it all? Is it true? Chen Feifei didn't answer, so it was a definite answer. She looked at Jean Hausa, and a flash of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes. Brother Hao, you know that I absolutely can't watch the Qin Corporation fall into that person's hands. Jean Hausa's hand unconsciously knocked on the table, and he suddenly raised his head. Don't be anxious. The Qin Corporation is still yours. It won't be anyone else's. Brother Hao, do you have a solution? Of course. Jean Hausa expressed his opinion. Let's not talk about the fact that uncle is still alive. The will only take effect when he dies. Even if there really is this will, it doesn't matter. Just ask your father to write another one. Will my father be willing? Chen Feifei sneered. He gave the company to Qin Jie. Will he be willing to write another one? No wonder, although he was unwilling at first, he still went to Canada later. So he was waiting for her here. He wants to give the company to Qin Jie, but he needs Qin Jie to be alive to spend it, right? Jean Hausa looked at Chen Feifei. Let my people take Qin Jie away and hide him for a few days. If your father really cares about him that much, he will naturally agree to write a new one. When the time comes, we can just go to the court. Won't everything be fine? Then what if my father writes another one? The legal effect of a will was based on the last will before a person died. Qin Yongchang could write another one. Then if Qin Jia was safe, he could also write another one. Zhang Haoze looked at Qin Feifei and thought of Zhang Kun. It's not difficult. Let the doctor write a certificate to prove that he is insane. Then no matter how many wills he writes later, they will be invalid. What's more, I don't intend to let him write another will. Then Brother Hao, I'll let him write the equity transfer agreement directly. Zhang Haoze sneered. The Qin Corporation still belongs to your father now. Let him transfer all the property under his name to you. By then, the property will already be under your name. What's the use of his will? This move was extremely ruthless. Qin Feifei didn't expect it. She looked at Zhang Haoze and suddenly smiled. Good idea. If possible, send the woman surnamed Liang to accompany my father. As for Qin Jia, let him be with them for a while. This meant that he wanted to use Qin Jia as a hostage. Zhang Haoze nodded. Okay, I'll get someone to arrange it. Thank you. Brother Hao. You're welcome. I came here to look for you for something. What? Issue a statement to break off the engagement with me. Qin Feifei was stunned for a moment. The 3-month period had actually passed long ago, but Zhang Haoze's name was too useful, so she had forgotten about it for a moment. TSK. I thought you'd forgotten. How could I forget such an important matter? In fact, he really forgot. He thought that it would be fine as long as they all reached an agreement. However, he didn't expect Shi Mengwan to care so much about this matter. He had no choice but to come personally to resolve this matter. Brother Hao, do you dislike me that much? You won't give me a chance at all? She was a little resentful. No matter what, she had grown up with him, but their relationship was actually so indifferent. It really made her sad. Feifei, all right. Qin Feifei shook her head. I'm so good. It's not like no one wants me. But Brother Hao. Since the right to break off the engagement is in my hands, you shouldn't mind what excuse I use, right? I don't mind. This was what he had promised Qin Feifei back then. However, if Zhang Haoze knew what Qin Feifei said later, it would make things difficult for him. He probably wouldn't think that way now. Shi Mengwan didn't expect that she would be able to see Zhang Haoze so soon this time. She thought that after she made that request last time, it would take a long time for Zhang Haoze to appear. After all, Qin Feifei seemed to like Zhang Haoze so much, so how could she easily agree to break off the engagement? Therefore, after Su Qingsang's 1-month celebration for the twins, she played in Rong City for 2 more days. Under Su Qingsang's persuasion, she promised her that if Zhang Haoze couldn't run away to marry her and get married, she wouldn't be with Zhang Haoze. It wasn't that Su Qingsang didn't believe Zhang Haoze, but she really felt that her good friend was a woman who was blinded by love. Otherwise, why would she be single for a big brother from more than 10 years ago? Shi Mengwan didn't expect that as soon as she entered the door and put down her luggage, Zhang Haoze would come. Zhang Haoze returned to Lin City earlier than Shi Mengwan. As soon as he came back, he went to find Qin Feifei to resolve the engagement. He didn't expect Qin Feifei to be in trouble. He used a day to arrange the arrangements and send Qin Jia away. Then, he asked someone to send Qin Jia's mother, who had come to cause trouble for Qin Feifei, to Canada to accompany Qin Yongchang. Now that the people who were watching Qin Yongchang had already obtained the transfer certificate, the next step was to take it to justice. Qin Feifei officially took control of the Qin Corporation. After he finished all these things, it seemed like a lot, but it only took him 2 days. Once he was done, he asked Qin Feifei to announce the news. Qin Feifei said that the Qin Corporation happened to have a press conference tomorrow. She would announce it at the press conference. Zhang Haoze's matter had been resolved. He didn't want to delay any longer. He directly came to look for Shi Mengwan. When Shi Mengwan saw Zhang Haoze at this moment, her emotions were a little complicated. Tomorrow, Qin Feifei will hold a press conference to announce the annulment of the engagement with me. Before she was about to ask Jean Hausa to leave, Jean Hausa said this in advance. Shi Mengwan was stunned. She blinked and looked at Jean Hausa in front of her. What did you say? I said, tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Chen Feifei will hold a press conference to announce the annulment of the engagement with me. As he spoke, he took a step inside. Shi Mengwan was shocked by his words. Subconsciously, she took a step back and let him in. Jean Hausa came in and reached out to pull Shi Mengwan into his arms. He hugged her tightly, lowered his head, and searched for her lips. This time, Shi Mengwan didn't push him away. Instead, she let him kiss her. She blinked and looked at the enlarged face in front of her. For a moment, she thought that she was hallucinating, but she knew that Jean Hausa wouldn't joke about such a thing. If it was true, didn't that mean that she could be with him openly in the future? Thinking of this, Shi Mengwan's eyes actually felt a little sore and swollen. Jean Hausa kissed her very gently. From her lips, to her cheeks, to her earlobes. Her eyelids. He kissed her bit by bit and took off her clothes bit by bit. Shi Mengwan didn't push him away. She reached out and hooked her arms around his neck. If she was more honest with herself, she would admit that she missed him too. She missed him very much. Even if she pushed him away 100 times, 1,000 times. When he got close to her again, she would still think about being with him. That was the contract they had made since they were young. Tears welled up at the corners of her eyes and were kissed by him. His kiss fell on her like a feather. She closed her eyes and trembled with his movements. This night was exceptionally long, but it also seemed exceptionally short. Shi Mengwan was very tired, very tired. But even though she was so tired and had something on her mind, she still woke up early the next day. Yesterday, she didn't have much interaction with Jean Hausa. But after making love, Jean Hausa still explained a little to her. Chen Feifei had once done him a favor, and he wanted to repay her. So he agreed to some of her conditions. She wanted to ask what kind of favor it was, but Jean Hausa didn't continue. Since you're so energetic, why don't we do it again? The memories made her blush. When she woke up, the first thing she did was to pick up her phone. At 9:30 p.m., the Chin Corporation held a press conference as expected. Not only did Lin City TV station come to interview, but there was also a live broadcast on the internet. Chapter 704. Chen Feifei's delicate image was completely different from before. She was wearing a dark suit and delicate makeup. She looked much more capable and experienced than before. Behind her was a man and a woman who seemed to be her assistants. When Chen Feifei walked to the upper seat and sat down, a reporter wanted to ask her questions. She waved her hand and quickly grasped the home court. She only said two things. First, she had officially taken over the Chin Corporation from Qin Yongchang. As for Qin Yongchang, because of his health, he had already gone abroad to recuperate. No one cared about Qin Yongchang's physical condition. This was because Chen Feifei then mentioned two of the Qin Corporation's future plans. The audience applauded. They all knew that the new CEO couldn't be judged by his appearance. He finished talking about the company's development direction. Immediately, a reporter asked about Chen Feifei and Jean Hausa. You've been engaged to President Jean for a long time. When will the wedding be held? The reporter's words made Chen Feifei chuckle. My friend, don't ask this question next time. President Jean and I have already broken off our engagement. So there won't be a wedding. What? The spotlights of the reporters below the stage were flashing non-stop, and a few reporters stood up to ask questions. Sorry. Chen Feifei smiled and signaled for the reporters to be quiet. My engagement with President Jean was annulled a long time ago. For some reason, it hasn't been made public. Today is a good opportunity for me to make things clear to everyone. Next time, don't associate me with him again. Miss Chen, I heard that you and President Jean are childhood sweethearts. May I ask why you broke off the engagement? Sorry, it's not convenient for me to disclose. Miss Chen, may I ask if President Zhang knows that you announced the annulment of the engagement today? Of course. Chen Feifei seemed to be in a difficult position. After all, he has been waiting for this day for a long time. Miss Chen, can you explain what you mean when you said that he has been waiting for this day for a long time? The reporter's questions came one after another. Chen Feifei avoided the important point and focused on the trivial. Because his heart belongs to someone else. Chen Feifei suddenly exclaimed, sorry. He was wrong. Actually, it's because we don't get along. Although we've been childhood sweethearts for so many years, we're only siblings. Please don't misunderstand and don't overthink it. After saying this, Chen Feifei left the press conference under the protection of security. However, her last two sentences were obviously a blatant lie. The reporters had caught a big scoop. Shi Mengwan didn't see the second half of the press conference. She only saw Zhang Haoze return when Chen Feifei said, I'm sorry, President Zhang and I have already broken off our engagement. She heard it. Zhang Haoze naturally heard it too. Shi Mengwan put down her phone and looked at Zhang Haoze. Suddenly, she felt a little unreal. Did they really break off the engagement? So simple? Was it that easy? What she had imagined and thought was very difficult was solved so easily. She blinked her eyes and stared blankly at Zhang Haoze approaching the bed. He sat down in front of her, looked at her dazed expression, and reached out to caress her cheek. Do you believe me now? Shi Mengwan bit her lip. She didn't know what she could say. How did you do it? Doesn't Chen Feifei love him very much? How could he be willing to break off the engagement? I did her a favor. Zhang Haoze reached out and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and gently kissed the top of her hair. Shi Mengwan let him kiss her and felt her heart beating a little fast. She wanted to cry, but she also wanted to laugh. Was the matter resolved just like that? Wan. Zhang Haoze straightened her shoulder and looked at her slightly red eyes. Now, can you promise to be my girlfriend? His eyes and brows were gentle. The face in front of her overlapped with the youth from back then. Shi Mengwan couldn't resist this face, nor could she resist his gentleness. She nodded heavily and threw herself into his arms. Shi Mengwan brought the dishes to the dining table, and Zhang Haoze set up the bowls. When the two of them looked at each other, there was a faint smile in each other's eyes. When they sat down, Shi Mengwan took the soup that Zhang Haoze scooped for her. At this moment, she thought that she had returned to the time when they were in the small bungalow. In the 2 days since Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze announced that they were breaking off their engagement, Shi Mengwan had been with Zhang Haoze. Other than occasionally going out to deal with business, he spent most of his time with her. This made her especially satisfied. After dinner, the two of them found a movie and snuggled up on the sofa to watch it. Shi Mengwan had thought of going to the cinema with Zhang Haoze to experience the feeling of a date. However, every time she had to go out and see such a big scene, she didn't want to go out with Zhang Haoze at all. It was too exaggerated. To Zhang Haoze, this kind of movie was very boring. He would rather do something else. However, Shi Mengwan was very interested in watching it. He was so bored that he could only play with her fingers. Shi Mengwan pulled her hand back, and he went to grab it again. Her hands were well maintained, but because she had been drawing for many years, there was a thin, extremely light layer of calluses where her fingers held the pen. He felt a little heartache when he saw it. He held her hand and brought it to his lips to kiss it. This kind of interference made Shi Mengwan unable to continue watching the movie. She pulled her hand back. Stop fooling around. Zhang Haoze stopped playing with her hand and turned to wrap his arms around her waist. He watched as she took the exquisite collarbone. He lowered his head and kissed it. Shi Mengwan pushed his head again. I said stop fooling around. Just as they were about to reach the climax, the male and female leads broke up because of a misunderstanding. Zhang Haoze kissed the top of her head instead. Wanwan, come back to Qing City with me. Shi Mengwan was watching attentively when she suddenly heard this. She turned around and glanced at Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze? Come back to Qing City with me, Zhang Haoze said very seriously. I've been busy for the past few days. Most of the business focus has been shifted over. In the next few days, Qing City will be the main focus. Wanwan, I hope you can come to Qing City with me. Shi Mengwan was silent. Before Zhang Haoze broke off the engagement, she had thought about how they would continue their path if she could be with Zhang Haoze openly one day. She had also considered what Zhang Haoze said about going with him. For example, didn't Su Qingsang also marry out of town? However, it was one thing to have this plan in mind, and it was another thing to actually have this day come. I need to think about it. What else do you need to think about? Shi Mengwan didn't know what to say. Now that she was in Lin City, it would only take her 2 hours to return to her home. But if she went to Qing City, she would be even further away from her parents. She originally wanted to bring her parents to Lin City, but they weren't willing. In 2 years, when Shi Mengru was admitted to a school in another city, her parents wouldn't even have a companion by their side. If you're worried about your parents, you can bring them to Qing City. I have a lot of businesses in Qing City. When the time comes, they can choose any place to live. My parents won't go with me. No matter how small the town was, it was still their own home. No matter how good Qing City was, it was still someone else's place. If your parents don't want to go, I can hire someone to take care of them. That's not necessary. They're in good health now. My dad is still working in the fields every day. Shi Mengwan looked at Zhang Haoze and thought of something else. Let's go back to town tomorrow to see my parents, okay? Mother Shi had some misunderstandings about Zhang Haoze, although it wasn't a misunderstanding. However, if she really wanted to go to Qing City with Zhang Haoze, she still had to get her parents to agree. Okay. Zhang Haoze nodded. I should visit your parents. Don't worry, I'll do my best. I'm afraid it won't be easy for my mother. Shi Mengwan didn't mind reminding him. Don't forget, you have a criminal record. Zhang Haoze also thought of it. He picked up Shi Mengwan's body and hugged her in his arms. Criminal record? Is it that serious? Isn't it? Shi Mengwan raised an eyebrow. You have a fiancé. She reached out and tapped Zhang Haoze's chest. Thinking about it this way, I'm really at a disadvantage. Perhaps I should get a fiancé too. Wanwan. Zhang Haoze didn't like such a suggestion. This joke isn't funny. I think it's pretty good. Shi Mengwan looked serious. After all, I haven't seen many other men, so she couldn't say the rest. Zhang Haoze would allow anything else, but to let Shi Mengwan see other men? Dream on. Shi Mengwan was just casually saying it. How could she really go see other men? Now that Zhang Haoze kissed her until she couldn't breathe, she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him instead. This kiss slowly changed its flavor. Shi Mengwan was right. In Shi Mengwan's heart, Zhang Haoze was a man with a criminal record. It was obvious from the fact that she kept arranging blind dates for her daughter. To Shi Mengwan, the son-in-law she wanted to find for her daughter didn't need to be rich or capable. There was only one requirement, to be good to her daughter and make her happy. Zhang Haoze, who had a fiancé before, was obviously not within her consideration. Therefore, when she saw Zhang Haoze follow Shi Mengwan into the door with his hands full of gifts, not only was there no smile on his face, but he was also very gloomy. Wanwan. Shi Mengwan and Zhang Haoze stayed together in Lin City for a few days. It wasn't until Zhang Haoze received a call that he was going back to Qing City. There were a lot of things waiting for Zhang Haoze to deal with in Qing City, but he stayed with her in Shi Mengwan's small apartment in Lin City. Tang Hua and Zhang Yang didn't say it out loud, but they were already complaining in their hearts. One had to know that although the Jean family was suppressed to the point that they couldn't raise their heads, Jean Lai wasn't dead yet. Jean Lai's wife, Bai Shuqiao, also had a good family background. Now that the two of them and their two sons were locked up under surveillance, how could the Bai family be willing to accept this? They had come to their door a few times, although they were all blocked. However, the Bai family had roughly guessed something and had been up to a lot of small tricks recently. Those small tricks couldn't stop Jean Hausa, but they still had to wait for Jean Hausa to return to Qing City before they dealt with Jean Lai and Bai Shuqiao. Jean Hausa didn't tell Shi Mengwan about these things. He only told Shi Mengwan before he went to bed last night that if possible, he wanted to visit the Shi family's parents as soon as possible. Shi Mengwan didn't hesitate. Since she had already decided to be with Jean Hausa, then it was a very necessary step to bring Jean Hausa to meet his parents. Shi Mengwan also knew that Jean Hausa had a fiancé that wouldn't be over so quickly with Mother Shi. Therefore, she was already mentally prepared when she came all the way here. Afraid that she would scare Mother Shi, Shi Mengwan resolutely didn't allow Jean Hausa to bring his convoy to town. So now there were only the two of them. Hearing Mother Shi call her, she touched Jean Hausa's arm. Before they came, they had agreed that Jean Hausa would perform today. Including how to explain it to Mother Shi, it was all his business. "Hello, Auntie." Jean Hausa handed over the gifts in his hands. The smile on his face was a little fawning. "These are gifts for Auntie and Uncle. I don't want them." Mother Shi didn't even look at them. She even took a step back. "I can't accept Mr. Jean's gift." Jean Hausa held the bags in both hands. He didn't feel awkward standing there. "How can Auntie not accept it? I'm with Wan Wan, so you're my elder. There's nothing I can't accept." "Stop." Mother Shi's expression changed when she heard his words. "What did you say? You're with Wan Wan?" Even though she was already mentally prepared when she saw them appear together, Mother Shi's expression still changed when she heard this. "Yes." Jean Hausa openly admitted. "Wan Wan and I had a misunderstanding before. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, we're back together." "Misunderstanding?" Mother Shi sneered and remained unmoved. "Is having a fiancé also a misunderstanding?" Jean Hausa was a little embarrassed. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. Auntie, I've already resolved this matter." "Resolved? How?" Mother Shi's attitude seemed to be good. Jean Hausa gained some courage. "I've already broken off the engagement." Shi Mengwan nodded at the side, as if to prove it to Jean Hausa. Unfortunately, Mother Shi wasn't moved at all. "Really? When did it end?" "Last week." Mother Shi didn't say anything. Jean Hausa just stood in the yard with the gifts in his hands. Shi Mengwan was afraid that he would get tired after carrying it for a long time, so she gave him a look and told him to put it down. Jean Hausa shook his head at her gently. Mother Shi didn't miss their small movements at all. She looked at Shi Mengwan and suddenly spoke. "Wan Wan. President Jean said that he broke off the engagement. Is this true?" "Yes." "Then how do you know that he really broke it off? What if he's lying to your face and deceiving you?" "Mom." Shi Mengwan felt that Mother Shi had really watched too much TV. How is that possible? He held a press conference and appeared on TV about breaking off the engagement. Really? Of course. Shi Mengwan quickly nodded. "Mom, don't worry. His engagement is really broken off." Mother Shi wanted to say something else, but Jean Hausa handed the gift in his hand forward at the right time. "Auntie, believe me. I'm really single now. I don't have an engagement, and I don't have a girlfriend. I'm also serious about Mengwan." With her guarantee, Mother Shi felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't remember what it was. In the end, she didn't hit a smiling person. She waved her hand and called Jean Hausa into the house. The few of them had been standing in the yard talking just now. Fortunately, it was busy farming now, so there weren't many people. Otherwise, people might gossip if they saw them. Shi Mengwan blinked at Zhang Haoze. This meant that she had passed. Zhang Haoze smiled and the two of them entered the door. Mother Shi looked at the time. Your dad has gone to the fields and will be back soon for dinner. You guys sit for a while. I'll go buy some vegetables. Mom, I'll go with you. No need. Mother Shi tapped Shi Mengwan's forehead. If you want to come back next time, let me know in advance. Since her son-in-law came to visit, she had to entertain him well. Even this child didn't say a word. Mom. We're all family. There's no need to stand on ceremony with him. Mother Shi's reaction was to glare at her, then turn around and go out. Shi Mengwan looked at Zhang Haoze and suddenly smiled. It was as if she didn't expect to pass so easily. Zhang Haoze was a little worried just now, but now he relaxed. Look, nothing happened at all. On the way here, Shi Mengwan had been very worried. Along the way, she thought about what he would do if Mother Shi made things difficult for him. I'm fine because my mother loves me. Shi Mengwan's face was full of pride. Do you think it's because of you? My mother loves me, so she won't make things difficult for you. Yes. It was rare that Zhang Haoze didn't argue with Shi Mengwan. Your mother loves you. She also loves her son-in-law. Go away. Shi Mengwan hit him. Whose son-in-law are you? Don't randomly call me relatives. If I'm not your son-in-law, why did you bring me here? While the two of them were laughing, Father Shi returned. He suddenly saw that there was a man at home, and he was even holding hands with his daughter and standing together very intimately. His expression didn't look good for a moment. Wan? Dad. Shi Mengwan quickly retracted her hand and took 2 steps forward. You're back? Yes. Father Shi nodded. Yes. I'm back. His trousers were still stained with mud from working in the field, and his face was a little black and red from the sun. At this moment, his gaze sized up Zhang Haoze. Hello, uncle. My name is Zhang Haoze. I'm Wan's boyfriend. Zhang Haoze went forward and introduced himself. It was his first time meeting his father-in-law, so he was under a lot of pressure. However, he was used to being cold. Even if he was nervous, it couldn't be seen on his face at all. Instead, he looked very calm and collected. Father Shi didn't look at him. Instead, he looked at Shi Mengwan. Wan? When did this happen? Why haven't I heard of it at all? You didn't object when your mother said that she wanted to arrange a blind date for you, right? At that time, didn't you have a boyfriend? Dad, he's indeed my boyfriend. Zhang Haoze took another step forward and introduced himself again. At the same time, he reached out to shake Father Shi's hand. How long have you known each other? Father Shi didn't even look at that hand and only looked at Shi Mengwan. We've known each other for a long time. Shi Mengwan's words made Father Shi raise his eyebrows again. Known each other for a long time? Then why are you still going on a blind date? Shi Mengwan didn't expect Father Shi to catch the main point with one sentence. She chuckled. Although we've known each other for a long time, we've only been together recently. That's why we're going on a blind date. Is that so? Father Shi didn't say anything and just stared at Zhang Haoze. His looks were not bad, and he looked like a decent person. Even if Father Shi hadn't seen the world before, he knew that the suit wasn't cheap. Logically speaking, he should be happy to have such a son-in-law. But Father Shi couldn't be happy. He looked at his daughter, who was as beautiful as a flower. No matter how he looked at it, Zhang Haoze looked like a pig who came to steal his cabbage. He was inexplicably unhappy. Hence, he chose to ignore Zhang Haoze's extended hand. This atmosphere was really a little awkward. However, Zhang Haoze's heart was unusually strong. If Father Shi didn't shake hands with him, he would calmly retract his hand. As for Shi Mengwan's gaze, he even patted the back of her hand in a place where Father Shi couldn't see. The two of them exchanged flirtatious glances, didn't escape Father Shi's eyes. He looked at Zhang Haoze even more differently. At this moment, no matter what Shi Mengwan said, he didn't say anything. He just stood there and stared at Zhang Haoze. When he saw Shi Mengwan smiling sweetly at him, he suddenly had the urge to hit someone. Very soon, Mother Shi returned. She went into the kitchen and asked Father Shi to take a shower before coming out. No matter what, it was Zhang Haoze's first time visiting. It was really inappropriate for him to stand next to his future son-in-law in such a muddy state. Father Shi felt the disdain in Mother Shi's mouth, and his mood was a little complicated. When he looked at Zhang Haoze again, he was even more displeased. However, he had to listen to his wife's words. Father Shi obediently went to take a shower. Thus, one went into the kitchen, and the other went back to the room. Only Zhang Haoze and Shi Mengwan were left in the living room. "I'm sorry. My dad has never seen you before." Shi Mengwan didn't even believe what she said. She didn't know why her father had such great hostility when he saw Zhang Haoze for the first time. "It's okay. I understand." Zhang Haoze nodded. "If we have a daughter in the future and another man wants to marry her, I won't be happy either." Being unhappy was light. It was even possible for him to fight with him. "TSK, who wants to have a daughter with you?" Shi Mengwan smiled and patted him. In just a short while, Shi Mengru returned. Compared to Father Shi and Mother Shi, Shi Mengru was the only one who had a good expression towards Zhang Haoze. "Brother-in-law? Can I call you brother-in-law?" Shi Mengru's words caused Father Shi and Mother Shi to object at the same time. "No." "But, isn't he sister's boyfriend?" "He's not married, so why are you calling him brother-in-law?" Father Shi glared at his little daughter who was siding with an outsider. "Call him Mr. Zhang. Mengru, right? You can call me Brother Zhang." Zhang Haoze smiled and tried to smooth things over. He was handsome, and he looked imposing. Shi Mengru was 13 years old, the age of naughtiness. "Okay, Brother Zhang." She didn't know how to be polite at all. "You're so handsome. What do you do?" "I start a small company." Zhang Haoze said it very modestly. The corners of Shi Mengwan's mouth twitched. XM was also called a small company? Hee hee. Really? What company? XM, Zhang Haoze answered casually. Shi Mengru nodded. However, a few seconds later, she suddenly exclaimed. She took out her phone and swiped it a few times. Finally, she looked up at Zhang Haoze with a shocked expression. Chapter 705. As soon as he said this, the other three people present all looked at Zhang Haoze. Especially Mother Shi and Father Shi's gazes changed. Mengru, what are you talking about? Shi Mengwan looked at her sister. Even if Zhang Haoze had a fiancé, he didn't say that. Shi Mengru pouted and turned the phone to face her parents. I didn't say anything wrong. It was written on the news. Shi Mengwan wouldn't have known about this. However, their classmates were playing a game that was produced by XM Company. One had to know that XM Company's games were very popular. Fire one after another. The Universe player that recently came out had a lot of students in their school playing it. Although Shi Mengru didn't play games, her classmates were playing them. She had only played it a few times. After that, she felt that it was a waste of time and stopped playing. However, on the day that she uninstalled the game, she happened to see the news. Although Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei weren't celebrities, XM's achievements were too eye-catching. Especially the Universe player game, which had been ranked first in the download rankings for months in a row. Hence, players would naturally pay attention to it. For ordinary players, even if they knew that Zhang Haoze abandoned his fiancée because he had a mistress, so what? It was fine as long as the game was fun. Because of this, Shimengru often argued with her classmates. She felt that she didn't want to use a product developed by a company with a bad character. There was nothing she could do. The children raised by Father Shi and Mother Shi were so stubborn. Therefore, when she heard the familiar name of Jean Hausa and thought of XM, she immediately took out her phone to look for news. This matter was a little too big. One had to know that unlike Tianyu Group and Li Corporation, which operated in traditional industries, XM mainly focused on gaming and was very well known among young people. Jean Hausa used to be very mysterious, but ever since he got engaged to Chen Feifei, he was considered a celebrity in Lin City because of his handsome looks. However, the way Shimengru looked at Jean Hausa now was not very appreciative. Although she was young, she had a strong sense of right and wrong. She was afraid that Mother Shi wouldn't be able to see it clearly, so she specially enlarged the phone for her parents to see. "Dad, Mom, look. It's not me, it's the news." It had been less than a week since Jean Hausa and Chen Feifei broke off the engagement. It was still considered a hot news. He searched online and found a bunch of reports. Of course, many of these reports were not true. But no one cared if it was real or not. That day, Chen Feifei wanted to say it, but she was too shy. Her half-hearted attitude showed that she had explained it clearly. In fact, it made all the reporters in Lin City imagine a drama. Every media outlet even wrote different content. Yet, there were people who believed it. For example, the news on a certain website was, "Jean Hausa likes the new and dislikes the old, abandons his childhood sweetheart." Only Qing Mei was left to support the Qin Corporation. For example, a well-known magazine wrote, "Why did XM abandon its childhood sweetheart?" Little San's identity was mysterious, and his background was a mystery. But one thing was for sure, and that was that she was definitely more powerful than Chen Feifei. There were also other kinds of news. That was about it. These few days, Shi Mengwan and Jean Hausa only cared about being together. As for this news, because Jean Hausa had promised Chen Feifei that she could say whatever she wanted, Tang Hua and the others knew about it, but no one came to tell Jean Hausa. More importantly, Tang Hua and the others didn't take this matter seriously. Compared to the Jean family's matter, a small piece of news would naturally be suppressed in 2 days. Therefore, not only did Shi Mengwan not know, but Jean Hausa also didn't know that he had become a news figure. While Shimengru was speaking, Shi Mengwan also picked up her phone and flipped through the news. With this, her expression became a little subtle. The moment she finished reading the news, Father Shi and Mother Shi also finished reading it. The 4 members of the Shi family didn't say anything at this moment. Their gazes were extremely interested as they looked at Jean Hausa. "Jean Hausa, Auntie, Uncle, this matter actually Mr. Jean. I'm sorry." Mother Shi spoke first. In this family, she definitely had a position. "Chida isn't a match. Our Wanwan isn't a match for Mr. Jean. So, Mr. Jean, please." There was no way for villagers to chase people away in the middle of a meal. This was too humiliating. But Mother Shi actually did such a rude thing. "That's right." Father Shi glared at Jean Hausa coldly. He was already dissatisfied with the man who was going to marry his daughter, and now he was even more dissatisfied. "Mr. Jean, if you're not confused, please." Shimengru blinked and suddenly stopped talking. Shi Mengwan looked at her family and finally looked at Jean Hausa. "I'm a mistress." Because of his relationship with a mistress, he broke off the engagement with Chen Feifei? That's what the news meant, right? "Wanwan, you know you're not." "I don't know." Shi Mengwan only hated herself for not seeing this news earlier. If she had seen it earlier, she definitely wouldn't have brought Jean Hausa back. "I only found out now." Wanwan, Chen Feifei announced that she broke off the engagement. "You know about it, right?" "Yes." Jean Hausa couldn't deny it. He did know about it. "She said that you broke off the engagement with her because you had a third party. You know about it too, right?" "I didn't know." Jean Hauser shook his head. I just said that she could find any excuse she wanted. However, Jean Hauser didn't expect Chen Feifei to find such an excuse. Jean Hauser met the gazes of the two elders of the Shi family and felt a little awkward. But the most important thing right now was Shi Mengwan. He absolutely had no intention of making her a mistress. Wan. Shi Mengwan turned around and didn't listen to Jean Hauser's explanation. She looked at Father Shi and Mother Shi. Dad, Mom, this isn't what you think. The press conference and Chen Feifei saying that she was a mistress could be explained slowly. But now, she needed her parents' support. Wan. Mother Shi didn't expect Shi Mengwan to still speak up for Jean Hauser at this time. Father Shi's face turned green. Alright, stop talking. I won't agree to you guys being together. Mr. Jean, you should leave. Dad. Shi Mengwan wanted to say something, but Father Shi raised his hand and didn't listen to her at all. Don't call me. I'll say it again. I won't agree to you guys being together. Let him go. This isn't Hauser's fault. Shi Mengwan stood up. She didn't believe that her parents would be so unreasonable. Besides, I know about this. You know? Father Shi stood up and looked at her angrily. What do you know? What do you know? Huh? It's a fact that this man has a fiancée, right? Did you get together with him when he had a fiancée? Is that right? Tell me. Dad. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Father Shi had been straightforward all his life. Although he and Mother Shi couldn't be said to be rich, they were quite strict in educating their daughter. Especially after Shi Mengwan ran away from home for more than a year. After she came back, Father Shi and Mother Shi's concept of parenting changed. Let me ask you, did he get together with you when he had a fiancée? Shi Mengwan was speechless. Jean Hauser stood up as well. Uncle, this isn't Wan's fault. It's my fault. I didn't deal with my own problems in time. You can't blame Wan for this. Of course it's your fault. Father Shi said bluntly. But you're no one to me. I don't want to see you now. I'm just educating my daughter. He pointed at Shi Mengwan. If you still recognize me as your father, then break up with this. Dad. Shi Mengwan was speechless. She had waited so long for Jean Hauser to break off the engagement. She could be with him openly and honestly. The process wasn't very smooth, and it wasn't beautiful either. But wasn't it fine as long as the result was good? Uncle. Don't call me that. I can't afford it. Father Shi's temper flared up. He pointed in the direction of the door. Leave. Don't force me to make a move. Jean Hauser stood there with an extremely awkward expression on his face. Other than the Jean family, it had been a long time since anyone had given him a hard time. Uncle. Wan and I truly love each other. You truly love each other? Since you and Wan truly love each other, why are you engaged to another woman? Dad. When had Shi Mengwan ever seen Jean Hauser like this? She couldn't help but want to say a few words for him. Hauser and Chen Feifei got engaged because they shut up. I'll settle your problem with you later. Father Shi only stared at Jean Hauser. Now, get out of my house. Dad. If you talk again, I'll chase you out too. Father Shi's words made Shi Mengwan not dare to speak again. She stood there, not planning to let it go just like that. She still wanted to say more. Jean Hauser saw that she wanted to argue with Father Shi. He reached out and patted her shoulder, then glanced at her. He signaled for her to stop talking. Uncle, Auntie. It doesn't matter if you don't want to see me now. I can leave first. But there's one thing I want you to understand. I'm sincere about Wan. Without saying anything more, Jean Hauser actually left just like that. Shi Mengwan's toes moved and she almost chased after him again. This action made Father Sher's expression even uglier. Sister. Mengru hadn't said anything. Seeing that things had developed to this point, she quickly tugged at Mengwan's sleeve. Her parents were angry now, so it was better for her not to make them angry. Mother Sher couldn't bear it. She wanted to say something, but seeing her daughter like this, she didn't say anything in the end. Father Sher looked at Mengwan, who was still standing there motionlessly, and slammed the table hard. Why are you still standing? You don't want to eat anymore, do you? Mengwan knew that her father was angry, so she didn't plan to go against him. She obediently sat down. In rural houses, meals were eaten in the living room. Mengwan and Zhang Haoze were sitting with their backs facing the door. When she stood up, her view of the outside was also blocked. The moment she sat down, Mengru saw that Zhang Haoze hadn't left yet. She quickly blinked at her sister. Mengwan was about to turn around when Father Sher slammed the table again. You can't even eat in peace, right? Mengwan didn't turn around. She had roughly guessed it. Mother Sher also saw it, but she didn't say anything. Father Sher didn't like Zhang Haoze now. Seeing that he didn't leave, he shouted outside. Don't try to hurt yourself. It's useless for you to stand there. Leave my house. You're not welcome in our house. Zhang Haoze stood there, but he had no intention of leaving at all. Father Sher almost couldn't help but get up and chase Zhang Haoze out of the courtyard. Mother Sher tugged at his sleeve, so he had no choice but to sit back down. Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief, but she didn't turn around to look. This place was close to Lin City, but it was south of Lin City. It was noon. Although it wasn't midsummer yet, the sun was very hot. Zhang Haoze just stood under the sun, showing no signs of leaving. Mengwan didn't have much of an appetite. She casually ate 2 mouthfuls of rice, but in the end, she still turned around to look at Zhang Haoze. As if sensing her gaze, Zhang Haoze also looked at her and even smiled at her. Father Sher slammed the table again. Mengwan could only look away and lower her head to focus on eating. The child's father, although it was noon, there weren't many people passing by. But in the countryside, it wasn't popular to close the door during the day when there were people at home. Zhang Haoze just stood in their courtyard like a thorn. If someone saw him, you don't want to eat in peace either, do you? It was rare for Father Sher to speak to his wife in a bad tone. Thus, no one in the family spoke. After eating, Mengru took the initiative to stand up and clean up the dishes. She winked at Mengwan and quickly ran into the kitchen. Dad. Mom. Mengwan didn't turn around to look outside. She only looked at her parents. Zhang Haoze isn't what you think. Me and him aren't what you think either. Father Sher didn't want to hear it. He wanted to chase Zhang Haoze out now. Out of sight, out of mind. He stood up and was about to walk out when Mengwan called out. Dad. Zhang Haoze is dear brother. Father Sher's footsteps stopped there, and Mother Sher suddenly turned around to look at Mengwan. Dad, Mom, Zhang Haoze is that dear brother from back then. Father Sher and Mother Sher both knew about dear brother. Back then, when Mengwan found him, she had nightmares for a long time at night. In her dreams, she kept calling him dear brother, dear brother. For a period of time, Father Sher thought that she had a mental problem and wanted to take her to see a psychiatrist. However, they didn't know when Mengwan stopped dreaming and stopped shouting at night. They thought that this matter was over. Father Sher even thought that the so-called dear brother was a character that Mengwan had imagined herself. Otherwise, how could there be no news at all? However, Mother Sher didn't think that this matter was fake. When she heard her daughter mention this name back then, she knew that her daughter hadn't forgotten Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze is dear brother. Mengwan added. She had never told her parents about what happened that year. She only briefly mentioned that she was saved by a dear brother and lived together for a year. However, There were many details and many interactions between the two of them that were the most precious and precious memories to her. She didn't want to tell anyone, not even her parents. If there's a first come, first served rule in a relationship, I'm not the third party. Shi Mengwan recounted what happened back then in a very low voice. After she finished speaking, she talked about the nightmare that completely separated her from her dear brother. Dear brother offended some people back then, so we met some bad people. When you found me, dear brother was gone. Actually, he was saved by Chen Feifei, the young lady of the Chen family, his former fiancée. Zhang Haoze didn't tell Shi Mengwan about this part. She deduced it. The Chen family saved dear brother's life. He was a person who knew how to repay kindness. Especially Chen Feifei, who was in poor health and had heart disease. So when their family wanted the two of them to be together, dear brother agreed. But then we met again. Of course, Shi Mengwan wouldn't say that she never gave up and that she was the one who took the initiative to find Zhang Haoze. Because dear brother owed the Chen family a favor, he agreed to let the woman propose to break off the engagement. I can probably understand why Chen Feifei thinks that way. After all, she needs a good reputation. These were also Shi Mengwan's speculations. But these were already close to the truth. Chen Feifei is a woman. She insists on saying this now. Don't tell me you want dear brother to confront her and refute her. She believed that even if Zhang Haoze knew, he wouldn't do it. Firstly, the Chen family had done him a favor. Secondly, Zhang Haoze looked cold, but he was definitely not stingy towards people who had no conflict of interest with him. At this point, Shi Mengwan looked up at her parents. That's how it is. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. I've never been a third party, and I believe that no one will mention this matter again after a while. People were forgetful. They weren't celebrities. More importantly, she was about to go to Qing City with Zhang Haoze. Under such circumstances, how could she care about those rumors? Father Shi and Mother Shi were silent. After hearing Shi Mengwan's words, the two of them looked at each other. Now, they looked at Shi Mengwan together. You said that Zhang Haoze was the young man who saved you back then? Mother Shi's gaze changed a little. Her thinking was different from that of a man. To her, whoever saved her daughter was her savior. Yes. Shi Mengwan nodded. Dad, didn't you tell me that I have to repay kindness? Dear brother saved me, so he's my savior. Now that you've chased my savior out, you don't usually teach us like this, do you? Father Shi was stunned by Shi Mengwan and almost couldn't speak, but it was only for a moment. Don't go so far. Father Shi sneered. You said that he saved you? Then do you know how many injuries you had when we brought you back from the police? Do these injuries count as because of him? Shi Mengwan was speechless. Father Shi continued, yes, he saved you, but you just said that when you lived together, you cleaned, cooked, and washed for him. Does that count as you also helping him? Shi Mengwan was speechless. Her lips moved and she wanted to say something, but Father Shi spoke again. All right, even if it was in the past, you said that he saved you, but you took care of his life. Is this considered even? You said that he also took care of you. He arranged a school for you and took care of you. Then it's also a fact that you were almost killed because of him, right? Does this count as a clean slate? But how could matters of the heart be calculated in such a way? The past matters are even. I'll talk about what happened after you two reunited. After you two reunited, he was still with that Miss Chen, right? That's because I don't care about the reason. I'm just asking you, is that right? When you two were together, was he still related to that Miss Chen? Shi Mengwan's mouth opened and closed again. When she met Father Shi's eyes, she couldn't give a negative answer. Let's take a step back. All right, even if he wants to repay the favor, it's his business. It's his business to repay the debt of gratitude. What does it have to do with you? He dragged you down and made you bear the accusation of being a third party. Is that because of him? Are you going to suffer criticism because of him? We can, just tell me, isn't it? Shi Mengwan couldn't refute. Father Shi sneered. That's why you're saying so much now. You want me to agree to you two being together. Let me tell you, it's impossible. As long as he was around, it was absolutely impossible. He would never agree to Zhang Haoze being together with Shi Mengwan. But Dad, I really like him. You really like him and really want to be with him. And then? Father Shi's gaze was sharp. Haven't you thought about what you'll face after you two really get together? He knocked on the table and his voice was much colder than before. Others won't care about his difficulties and won't think about what happened to him. Others will only know that he once had an engagement, but it was broken off. And the reason it was broken off was because of you. No, and you have to bear the reputation of being a third party to be with him. Do you think that this matter will fade away after a long time? You're completely wrong. Actually, Father Shi didn't believe that Shi Mengwan hadn't thought of these things. But even if she had thought of them, she probably wouldn't care. Because in Father Shi's opinion, she had already been blinded by her emotions. Let me tell you, if you really want to be with him, these things won't pass. Do you know? Shi Mengwan sat there without moving. Of course she knew. But she really didn't care that much. After waiting for more than 10 years, she had been angry and desperate. Compared to that time, the disappointment now was much lighter. She could finally be with her dear brother. She was more grateful. Moreover, she didn't think that this matter couldn't be changed. In short, I won't agree. As he spoke, Father Shi stood up and walked outside. He glared at Zhang Haoze, who was still standing in the courtyard. Mr. Zhang, our house is small and can't accommodate a great Buddha like you. Mr. Zhang, please move. Uncle. I said, don't call me uncle. I can't afford it. Please. As he spoke, he directly pushed Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze's skills were excellent, so he usually wouldn't be pushed out by Father Shi. Chapter 706. As soon as he turned around, he met Shi Mengwan's gaze, and his face darkened. If you still recognize me as your father, I won't allow you to be with him. Dad. Shi Mengwan was about to faint. She couldn't help but turn to look at Mother Shi. Mom, look at Dad. She had wanted to stop Father Shi from chasing her away, but she didn't expect that she was still a beat too slow. She took a few steps forward and was about to open the door for Zhang Haoze. Father Shi stood at the door. He blocked the door and didn't give in at all. Don't open the door. Dad. Shi Mengwan was anxious. Seeing that the father and daughter were about to clash, Mother Shi quickly went forward to pull them apart. She said she was pulling them apart, but she was only trying to dissuade her daughter. Wan, you must be tired from the car ride all morning. You should go and rest first. Mother Shi winked at Shi Mengwan. Father Shi was in a fit of anger, so it was better not to face Father Shi head-on. But before Shi Mengwan could finish speaking, she saw Father Shi snort and stand still facing the door. His attitude showed that he had no intention of stepping aside. Dad, Mom. Shi Mengwan had a headache. I still have to go back to Lin City to work. You guys aren't planning to lock me at home and not let me go out, are you? The studio is all your own. Take a few days off and treat it as staying at home with your mother and me. Father Shi looked at Shi Mengwan. Besides, don't think that I don't know that you can still work online. There are computers and Wi-Fi at home. You can just stay at home for the next few days. Dad, how can you do this? I'm already an adult. How can you restrict my personal freedom? I'm not trying to restrict you. I'm doing this for your own good. If you really recognize me as your father, then agree to break up with that John guy. As long as you break up, I'll naturally let you go back. Dad, can you be more reasonable? Shi Mengwan didn't expect that after saying so much, she couldn't move Father Shi at all. She really didn't know what to do. I'm unreasonable. Let me tell you, I'm doing this for your own good. That Chin woman's family background is better than ours, right? That Jean guy doesn't even like her. Do you think he can be loyal to you for the rest of his life? I believe him. Unfortunately, I don't believe it. Father Sure had the same opinion as Mother Sure in this regard. Since ancient times, it was only right for families of equal status to be matched. If the surname Jean could earn so much money, and his conditions were so good, they were really not a good match. Dad. You haven't even interacted with him before, yet you're saying this. Aren't you being too arbitrary? Arbitrary? I'm being arbitrary and doing it for your own good. Father Sure's attitude was firm. Sure Mengwan was very helpless. After Sure Mengru washed the dishes and was about to go to school, Father Sure was still blocking the door and not letting Sure Mengwan go out. Sure Mengru stepped forward and looked at Father Sure with a fawning expression. Dad, it's fine if you block sister. I still have to go to school. Father Sure glanced at his little daughter and opened the door to let her go. Jean Hausa was still standing outside the door. When Sure Mengwan saw him, she moved her toes. However, before she could take a step out, Father Sure slammed the door shut again. He turned around and glared at Sure Mengwan. Don't even think about getting out today. I said it. Dad. Sure Mengwan really didn't know that her biological father had such a stubborn side. The sun in the courtyard was also very strong. Sure Mengwan's courtyard door was the kind of iron gate that could often be seen in the countryside. There was nothing to block it. The sun was so strong. Although Jean Hausa was a man, he wasn't afraid of the sun. However, Sure Mengwan's heart ached for him to stand outside the courtyard like this. Dad, just let him in. If there's anything, can't we just let him in and talk about it? He's just standing outside like this. Are you afraid that the neighbors will gossip when they see him? Gossip about what? Father Sure was stubborn. If he's afraid of being gossiped about, he can leave. If he doesn't stand there, won't no one gossip about him? Sure Mengwan felt a headache coming on. She looked at Father Sure and finally nodded. All right, let him stand. She turned around and walked into the house. Such an easy compromise stunned Father Sure for a moment, but he immediately became even more annoyed. He turned around and looked at Mother Sure. What is she doing? Throwing a tantrum at me? Losing her temper? What nonsense are you talking about? Mother Sure watched the father and daughter fight and was a little helpless. You're blocking her sweetheart outside, but you're not allowing her to have a little temper? She can't bear to see her sweetheart suffer, so she can let me, her father, suffer, right? Father Sure's words stunned Mother Sure for a moment, but she immediately reacted. She laughed. She was afraid that Jean Hausa, who was outside, would hear her, so her voice was very soft. Are you jealous? Father Sure's old face turned red. Who's jealous? Why isn't it jealousy? Mother Sure's smile became even brighter. She touched Father Sure's arm. You're unhappy that your daughter is about to run away with another man. Not to mention that your daughter is still thinking about protecting her sweetheart. She doesn't give you any face at all. What nonsense are you talking about? Father Sure was a little embarrassed. He glared at Mother Sure. Anyway, I don't like such a man. I don't agree. Humph. After saying this, he also entered the house. When he entered the house, he found that Sure Mengwan had actually returned to her room and ignored him. She didn't even think of saying anything nice. His face darkened. Sure Mengwan was in her room and looked at Jean Hausa downstairs from the window. Unfortunately, his body was blocked by the door, so she couldn't see it. After thinking for a moment, she took out her phone and sent him a message. The sun is shining. Go back to the car and sit down first. Jean Hausa took out his phone and smiled when he saw the message. It's okay. I can't retreat at a time like this. I have to let your father see my sincerity in wanting to marry you, right? Shi Mengwan was speechless when she saw the message he replied. Looking at the words, marry you, on it, she replied, did you make a mistake? You should let me see your sincerity first, right? After all, you haven't even proposed. Then I'll propose now. Marry me. Can you? That's it? I don't want to agree. Then what do I have to do to agree? What do you think? Anyway, I don't want to marry you like this. You should rest for a while. When you wake up, maybe your father will let me in. Dream on. Shi Mengwan didn't doubt her father's determination at all. You're standing there looking at your wife. My father might agree to let you in. Then why don't we make a bet? Let's see if your father will let me in when you wake up from your nap. Let's bet. Shi Mengwan didn't believe him. When he replied to the message, the corners of his mouth curled up, and there was a faint smile in his eyes. If you lose, what will you do? If I lose, I'll listen to everything you say. Okay. In Shi Mengwan's opinion, Zhang Haoze would definitely lose. If I win, you'll marry me. Shi Mengwan looked at Zhang Haoze's message and was a little speechless. How could she lose? She wouldn't lose. Okay. I'm going to take a nap now. If you can really get my father to let you in, I'll marry you. It's a deal. It's a deal. After replying to the message, Shi Mengwan really went to sleep. At first, she couldn't fall asleep. Hearing that there was no sound outside, she thought that Zhang Haoze must still be standing outside. For some reason, she felt good. Just as she was sleeping soundly, Mother Shi's voice woke her up. Get up. For a moment, Shi Mengwan didn't understand where she was. She sat up and looked at Mother Shi. Mom? Yes. When you wake up, go downstairs and talk about your marriage with Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan blinked. Mom, what are you talking about? Since you're awake, go downstairs. Zhang Haoze is downstairs. Come down first. Let's see what you plan to do about your marriage. Was there something wrong with her ears? What was Mother Shi talking about? My marriage with Zhang Haoze? Could there be someone else? Mother Shi tapped her forehead. All right, hurry up. I'll ask your second and third uncles to come over for dinner tonight. It can be considered as letting Zhang Haoze meet his relatives. What kind of godly operation was this? Shi Mengwan couldn't understand it now. After Mother Shi went out, she quickly got up and used the shortest time to take care of herself. She changed her clothes and hurried downstairs. When she went downstairs, she realized that the atmosphere downstairs was a little strange. Other than Father Shi, Mother Shi, and Zhang Haoze, there was actually Grandma Shi. She was very surprised. How did Zhang Haoze enter the door? But before that, she had to greet Grandma Shi. Grandma? Although she wasn't close to Grandma Shi, she still had to be polite. Wan, you're back. It's so hot today. Why don't you sleep a little longer? Grandma Shi seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. She saw that Shi Mengwan didn't give her the same attitude as before. This sudden enthusiasm made Shi Mengwan feel flattered for a moment. She stood there without moving. Grandma Shi had already come forward and pulled Shi Mengwan's hand. Wan, look at you. Why didn't you tell Grandma that you found a boyfriend? You should have brought him back a long time ago. Shi Mengwan's hand was held by Grandma Shi. She blinked and looked at Zhang Haoze. My grandma let you in? Your dad let me in. Impossible. It's already a light punishment for my dad not to hit you. How could he let you in? Your dad is right there. Do you want to ask him? Just like that, their gazes met in the air. In a few moments, they had already understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Shi Mengwan bit her lip and didn't wait for her to look at Father Shi. Grandma Shi had already pulled her hand and sat down at the side. You're here at the right time. I was just talking about how to deal with the banquet. Shi Mengwan realized that she couldn't keep up with her grandmother's train of thought. Why did she suddenly jump to the banquet? Sure enough, she hadn't said anything yet. Father Shi's face darkened first. Mom, who said we're going to have a banquet? Don't add to the mess. I haven't agreed to Wanwan's marriage yet. What did you say? Grandma Shi's expression changed instantly. She glared at Father Shi with a dissatisfied expression. What nonsense are you talking about? You don't even agree to such a good son-in-law. Tell me, what kind of son-in-law do you want? Huh? Don't tell me you still want your daughter to marry a president? Mom. Father Shi's face turned green. It's not like that. I know. He was engaged before. So what if he was engaged? Not to mention engaged. Even if he was married, wouldn't he be allowed to remarry after a divorce? Mom? Father Shi had been Grandma Shi's son for many years. How could he not know that his mother was especially good at causing trouble? He told me about Hausa on the way just now. How big of a deal is it? Isn't it just an engagement? Since it's over, it means that they're not fated. Now that he's going to be with Wanwan, it means that he and Wanwan are fated. Don't you think so? Father Shi had a headache. Look, even Hausa was called. His face was full of anger, but the other party was his mother. There were still outsiders around, so he didn't necessarily want to quarrel with Grandma Shi in front of outsiders. On the other hand, it was rare for Mother Shi to stand on the same side as her mother-in-law after so many years. Yes, it still depends on fate. Look, even your wife said that. That means that our Wanwan and Hausa are fated. Hausa, don't you think so? Jean Hausa nodded in agreement. Yes, I have a deep fate with Wanwan. That's right. Grandma Shi looked at Jean Hausa with satisfaction. Oh right, what's Hausa's zodiac sign? I'm a dragon. Look. Grandma Shi's eyes lit up as she looked at Father Shi. Hausa is a dragon. Our Wanwan is a horse. The year of the dragon and the year of the horse are a perfect match. Pfft. If Shi Mengwan were to drink water now, she would definitely spit it out. She looked at Grandma Shi and realized for the first time that her grandmother was also a talent. Mom. What era is this? You still believe in this? Father Shi was even more displeased with Jean Hausa now. However, he couldn't flare up. Why don't you believe it? Look at Master Zhao at the east end of the village. He's a dragon and he's married to a tiger. They fight every day. What did that fortune teller Zhang Banxian say? He said that it's best for a dragon to marry a horse. A perfect match. They're a match made in heaven. Shi Mengwan had a hard time holding back her laughter. She couldn't help but look at Jean Hausa and found that he was listening to Grandma Shi's nonsense seriously. She couldn't help but rub her forehead. This was really, Hausa, don't you think so? Yes. Jean Hausa wasn't impatient at all. Instead, he agreed. I've asked a few friends who have studied metaphysics before. They also said that Wanwan and I are a good match. Shi Mengwan had already lowered her head and didn't want to look at Jean Hausa. How come she didn't know that Jean Hausa would actually talk nonsense with a straight face? I knew it. Since that's the case, let's settle things as soon as possible. Grandma Shi thought for a moment. This year is a good year. You know, right? There's no beginning of spring next year. It's best to get married this year. I think so too. If possible, I hope to marry Wanwan as soon as possible. Child, I can tell that you're a good person at first glance. Grandma Shi smiled like a flower. Shi Mengwan really couldn't stand it anymore, but the two in front of her continued. How about this? I'll let Zhang Banxian see which day is suitable. Okay, I'll listen to Grandma. Jean Hausa nodded. Before choosing a good day, we can get engaged first. Mom. Father Sure couldn't take it anymore. I haven't agreed yet. Why won't you agree? Grandma Sure stood up and looked at Father Sure. Didn't you say that when I didn't let you marry Wan's mother in the past? Now, marriage is free and love is free. You said that times are different and you told us, as parents, not to interfere with our children's marriage? Why are you interfering with Wan's marriage now that it's in your hands? Father Sure was speechless. Wan, let me ask you, you brought Hausa back, right? Yes. Sure Mengwan had a hard time holding it in just now, but now it was even harder. You like him, and he likes you. You two are together of your own free will, right? Yes. Sure Mengwan ignored Father Sure's ugly expression and nodded vigorously. Look, Grandma Sure spread out her hands. Isn't it settled now? Marriage is free and love is free. You said it. Mom, Father Sure felt a headache coming on. All right, it's settled then. Grandma Sure made the decision on the spot. Wan, accompany Hausa around town. I'll discuss with your father and see what to do about your marriage. Also, I'll make the decision tonight. I'll ask your second uncle, third uncle, and your aunt to come over for dinner. I'll also let him recognize his relatives. Got it. Grandma. Mother Sure had said this just now, so Sure Mengwan wasn't surprised at all. She pulled Jean Hausa's hand and walked out. Her footsteps were a little fast. She was really afraid that if she stayed any longer, she wouldn't be able to control herself. After so long, this was the first time she realized that her grandmother had such a powerful ability. She did have some questions to ask Jean Hausa. Therefore, she couldn't care less about Father Sure's fierce and sharp gaze and left the house with Jean Hausa. She took a nap. Coincidentally, the sun outside wasn't that bright anymore. The clouds in the sky covered the sun. A gust of wind blew over. Not only was it not hot, but it was also cool. Sure Mengwan breathed in the familiar fresh air of her hometown and turned to look at Jean Hausa. Tell me, how did you do it? Jean Hausa didn't answer her question. He just pinched her palm. Don't worry about how I did it. Did I win today? Although he was very unwilling to admit it, he really won. Sure Mengwan nodded. Yes. You won. So, you're going to marry me? Tell me first, how did you do it? Enticement. Jean Hausa threw out 2 words. Sure Mengwan blinked and thought of Grandma Sure's usual personality. What benefits did you promise my grandmother? Without waiting for Jean Hausa to answer, she suddenly raised her hand. No, tell me first, how did you know to look for my grandmother? She didn't believe that Jean Hausa didn't have a helper. The biggest possibility was, my sister, right? She must have told you to look for my grandmother. Smart, it's your sister. Jean Hausa smiled. He was quite satisfied with this future sister-in-law. She was the one who asked me to look for grandmother. Because Grandma Sure didn't have a good relationship with Mother Sure, and because she was angry that Father Sure refused to listen to her and adopt a stepson, she had always been taking turns staying at second uncle and third uncle's house. After Jean Hausa received Sure Mengru's guidance, he quickly went to look for Grandma Sure. Of course, Sure Mengru brought him along. When Grandma Sure heard that he was Sure Mengwan's boyfriend, she listened to Sure Mengru's introduction. She didn't even take an afternoon nap and suddenly became energetic. She chatted with Jean Hausa for a while. After Sure Mengru went to work, she beat around the bush and listened to Jean Hausa's conditions. She was certain that this was a rich husband. How could she let such a good man go? It was rare for Sure Mengwan to be so lucky to meet such a good man. Grandma Sure was so happy. More importantly, Jean Hausa generously agreed to many of Grandma Sure's conditions. What did you agree to my grandma? Nothing much. Jean Hausa looked at Sure Mengwan's beautiful side profile and avoided the question. If I can marry you, I don't think any conditions are a big deal. Jean Hausa. That was because he didn't understand what kind of person Grandma Sure was. If he dared to agree to those conditions, Grandma sure would have a way to ask for more in the future, like a bottomless pit. Don't worry. Grandma is very reasonable. It's really nothing much. Grandma sure was reasonable. Shi Mengwan blinked and couldn't believe her ears. Jean Hausa, what conditions did you agree to, my grandma? If you don't tell me, I won't marry you. It's really not a big deal. Jean Hausa stopped in his tracks and pressed his forehead against Shi Mengwan's forehead. He looked at her face with a hint of gentleness in his eyes. I told you, those are nothing. No matter what price he had to pay, he was lucky to be able to marry her. And after Grandma Shi received his promises, she would naturally think of a way to convince Father Shi. He didn't want to use money to bribe anyone, but if such a move was useful, he didn't mind doing it. Moreover, although Grandma Shi occasionally looked unreliable, this time, she really wasn't the one who suggested it. Jean Hausa took the initiative to agree. He roughly knew that Shi Mengwan and Grandma Shi didn't have a good relationship, and he also knew that after so many years, there were some things in Shi Mengwan's heart that she couldn't forget. If he could get Grandma Shi to agree to their marriage with just a little money and make their relationship better, then why wouldn't he do it? Jean Hausa's words moved Shi Mengwan a little. She looked at Jean Hausa and suddenly tiptoed and kissed him on the lips. Thank you, Jean Hausa. Her actions made Jean Hausa smile. He was obviously very satisfied with her initiative. However, that's it? Your thank you gift is still so insincere. Shi Mengwan's face turned red. What else do you want? Nothing, I just wanted to remind you. Remember that you lost to me, and you have to marry me. Shi Mengwan pulled her hand back and took a big step back. I won't. I didn't even propose. I won't marry you. You won't marry me? Jean Hausa narrowed his eyes and chased after Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan quickly ran away. The two of them chased each other on the road not far from the Shi family's house. They didn't stop until Shi Mengwan met an acquaintance. After Shi Mengwan took Jean Hausa around the town and brought him home, she realized that although Father Shi's expression was still ugly, he didn't chase Jean Hausa out anymore. He looked at Jean Hausa with displeasure in his eyes. Chapter 707. Shi Mengwan took a step forward. Dad? Father Shi felt even more uncomfortable when he saw her like this. He couldn't help but raise his voice. Why? Can't I talk to him for a bit? Go and help your mother cook. You, come with me. It was still too early to cook. Grandma Shi wasn't around right now. It seemed like she had gone to second uncle and third uncle's house to call for someone. Shi Mengwan was a little worried and couldn't help but glance at Jean Hausa. Facing his future father-in-law's fierce gaze, Jean Hausa patted the back of Shi Mengwan's hand comfortingly and followed behind Father Shi. Half an hour later, Jean Hausa returned behind Father Shi. The two of them seemed to be quite friendly. Shi Mengwan thought, this must be my imagination. Yes, it must be. Today's experience was quite novel for Jean Hausa. This was the first time he was put in a difficult position. It was the first time he was chased out of his house, and the first time he was threatened. It was the first time Kuo Lianshan had eaten with such a large table of people. He had a lot of social engagements in the business world, but there weren't many people who could sit in front of him. Shi Mengwan's family consisted of 4 people. Including Grandma Shi, there were 4 from second Uncle Shi's family, and 5 from third Uncle Shi's family. Shi Mengwan's aunt was also called back by Grandma Shi. 2 tables were filled with people. The table was outside in the courtyard. She ate the dishes cooked by Mother Shi herself. The ingredients were already made. The chickens were reared in the back, and the vegetables were picked from the fields. He was drinking the soju that Father Shi brewed himself using the rural method. It didn't look like much, but it was full of power. Although Shi Mengwan and Grandma Shi occasionally didn't get along because of the matter of adoption. However, the 2 uncles and aunts were not bad people. The whole family was happy and harmonious. Although there were occasional restraints, this kind of atmosphere was very fresh for Jean Hauser. He was inevitably drunk. After getting drunk, he slept in Shermangwan's room upstairs for the whole day. In the end, when he woke up the next day, under Father Sher's disdainful gaze, he brought him to the field. In this season, many vegetables were already ripe, such as beans, eggplants, and loofah. Father Sher asked him to help pick the vegetables. Shermangwan wanted to help, but Father Sher wouldn't let her. He said that this was a chance for Jean Hauser to perform. What could Jean Hauser say? Of course, he followed them. However, this vegetable was not finished. Jean Hauser received a call from Tang Hua. Something had happened in Qingcheng. After leaving the Sher family, Jean Hauser drove a little faster. He couldn't get on the highway here, so he had to go to the county. Before Jean Hauser drove the car out of the town, Tang Hua had already brought the motorcade to wait for them at the entrance of the town. Tang Hua brought people here, so Jean Hauser naturally didn't need to drive himself. He got into the car with Shermangwan. Before getting into the car, Shermangwan saw Tang Hua say something to Jean Hauser. But the voice was too soft, so she didn't hear it clearly. When he got into the car, Shermangwan saw the anxiety in his eyes. He was a little worried. Did something happen to the company? Is it urgent? Fortunately, I can solve it. Jean Hauser's expression was very calm. Speaking of which, it was really not a big deal. It was just that Jean Li ran away with a broken arm. Shermangwan looked at his expression and didn't ask anymore. She had discovered very early on that no matter how she asked, he wouldn't say anything that Jean Hauser didn't want her to know. The car got on the highway very smoothly and quickly. Shermangwan looked at his side profile and thought of something else. Oh right, what did my dad say to you yesterday? Nothing. Jean Hauser thought of Father Sher's threat to him. He said, don't think that you have money. Our family doesn't want your money, and we don't care. My daughter can earn money. Let me tell you, if you don't treat Wan well, I won't let you off even if I have to risk my life. Really? Why didn't she believe it? You have a good father. As he spoke, he held her hand and placed it in his palm. Not only that, I also have a good mother. In Shermangwan's heart, her parents were the best in the world. And your parents are very good. Jean Hauser's voice seemed to be emotional. He pulled Shermangwan into his arms and pressed his chin against the top of her head. Actually, I also have a good mother. Originally, he also had a good father. But Shermangwan wanted to look up at him, but he pressed the back of her head. Unfortunately, my mother didn't live long enough to see me grow up. Your mother, she had heard before that his mother was no longer around, but she didn't know why. When I was 7 years old, she had an accident. He didn't finish his sentence, but Shermangwan could feel Jean Hauser's stiff body. She subconsciously wrapped her arms around him. She looked up at him. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's all in the past. Jean Hauser's expression was calm, but only he knew that all of that wasn't in the past. His arms around Shermangwan were a little tight. Shermangwan's hands wrapped around his waist, silently comforting him. Jean Hauser's heart was as hard as a knife. He didn't need Shermangwan's comfort at all, but her actions still made him feel extremely comfortable. He reached out and patted her back gently. Feeling the fragrance on her body, the trace of ruthlessness and murderous hatred in his heart was slightly suppressed. Shermangwan was patted by him and actually felt a little sleepy. Before she knew it, she fell asleep. She fell asleep, but Jean Hauser couldn't fall asleep. His mind was thinking about Jean Li. Jean Li had lost an arm, so he couldn't run far. Moreover, the entire Jean family was under his surveillance. In this situation, the person who could help Jean Li get out must be someone who was very familiar with the Jean family. He suddenly pressed a button in the car. The glass in the middle lowered. Tang Hua turned around and looked at Jean Hauser, asking him what was the matter with his eyes. Jean Hausa looked at Shi Mengwan, who was sleeping soundly in his arms. He took out his phone and typed a line of words before handing it to Tang Hua. Let the people watching the sanatorium take a look. Is the old man still there? Tang Hua was stunned for a moment. He obviously didn't expect Jean Hausa to ask this. However, he nodded slightly and quickly understood what Jean Hausa meant. After Jean Hausa asked the question he was concerned about, he didn't ask anymore. When Shi Mengwan woke up, Jean Hausa just happened to get the news he wanted to know. The old man was missing. Heh. In a place like the sanatorium, his people were guarding it layer by layer, but the old man still didn't see him? Jean Hausa definitely wouldn't believe that there wasn't a mole in this matter. Shi Mengwan looked at the moving car and sat up to look at the time. Are we not there yet? We're here. We're going to the airport now. Jean Hausa looked at Shi Mengwan and placed her hand in his palm. Wanwan, come back to Qing City with me, okay? Shi Mengwan had originally planned to follow him back, but she said, isn't it too rushed? I still have a lot of things to do in my studio. You can use the internet to handle some of the work. As for the studio, I'll hire someone to take care of it for you. I've already found a place in Qing City. It'll all follow your current model and open a new song-seeking studio. How about that? Shi Mengwan didn't expect him to move so quickly. You've already done it? Yes. Jean Hausa nodded. I've found a place. It's not far from my company in Qing City. Also, the location and half of it are based on your current style. When we go to Qing City, you can go take a look yourself. You've already taken care of it. Can I still find a reason to refuse? No. Jean Hausa looked at her with a deep gaze. Just treat it as me being selfish. I want you to accompany me. Okay. Shi Mengwan nodded. Jean Hausa knew that she would agree, but he didn't expect her to agree so quickly. Wanwan? It's my job anyway. It doesn't matter where I go. I can work hard to start my own business in Lin City, so I believe I can do well in Qing City. Besides, there's still you. You'll help me, right? Yes. Jean Hausa nodded. I'll help you. 4 hours later, Jean Hausa and Shi Mengwan arrived at Cherry Blossom Manor. You rest for a while. I have something to take care of. I probably can't have dinner with you tonight. Okay. Shi Mengwan wasn't a teenage girl who would pester her boyfriend to accompany her every day. If you have something to do, go ahead. I'm a little busy these few days. If you want to go to Rome City to see Mrs. Hua, I'll get someone to send you there. Okay, I'll think about when to go. Last time, Su Qingsang was still waiting for her to explain what happened with Jean Hausa. She hadn't told her properly yet. This time, she had to explain it to Su Qingsang properly. Jean Hausa was a little moved by how considerate she was and how she didn't quarrel with him. He lowered his head and kissed her lips until she was panting. Wait for me to come back. Jean Hausa finished explaining. When he left Cherry Blossom Manor, he asked Tang Hua to double the number of guards here before leaving. His destination was the Jean family's mansion. The Jean family's mansion was at the foot of the Green Mountain near the suburbs of Qing City. Looking up from the foot of the mountain, the entire area belonged to the Jean family. Other than the main building in the middle, there were also side buildings on both sides and side buildings at the back. Jean Kun was old and didn't like others to disturb him. Therefore, even the descendant of the Jean family, Jean Lai, lived in the side building. After Jean Kun was sent to the sanatorium, the side building locked up Jean Lai, by Xu Qiao, Jean Li, and Jean Yang's family. Jean Hausa was afraid that they would be afraid, so he asked people to guard them. Other than the cook and the 2 cleaning servants, no one else could come in. Usually, the people in charge of buying vegetables were arranged by Jean Hausa. Others could go in, but Jean Lai's family couldn't go out. So now that Jean Li had disappeared, it was really suspicious. After entering the door, Zhang Lai sat on the sofa. Zhang Yang had a broken leg, so he naturally couldn't run away. Bai Shuqiao sat next to Zhang Yang. When she saw Zhang Haoze enter, she was like an angry cat and started cursing again. Zhang Haoze didn't even look at her and walked straight to Zhang Lai. Where is he? He was tall and had no less than 10 bodyguards behind him. More than 10 people squeezed into the living room. Even though the living room of the Zhang family wasn't small, it still looked very cramped. Bai Shuqiao stood up and pointed at Zhang Haoze's nose. Zhang Haoze, aren't you vicious? Zhang Li is your younger brother, and you actually let someone break his hand. It's one thing to break his hand, but you still want to lock us up. Let me tell you, do you think you can lock us up for the rest of our lives? Let me tell you, don't even think about it. She continued to curse, and the words that followed became more and more unpleasant to hear. Zhang Haoze walked past her and directly in front of Zhang Lai. Where is he? Zhang Lai sat on the sofa and didn't dare to speak. Zhang Haoze sneered and clapped his hands. Soon, someone came in. Zhang Haoze. Zhang Lai didn't understand what he was going to do until he saw Zhang Haoze's man holding a knife and pointing it at Zhang Yang's uncrippled leg. Zhang Haoze, what are you doing? Zhang Haoze, tell him to put down the knife. What exactly do you want to do? Zhang Haoze wasn't moved at all. He waved his hand, and the knife in the man's hand was about to stab into Zhang Yang's leg. Zhang Lai stood up. Zhang Haoze, are you crazy? Where is he? Zhang Haoze's hand stopped for a moment and he stared at Zhang Lai's face. Who are you talking about? Who knows what you're talking about? Zhang Kun and Zhang Li, where are they? How would I know? As soon as Zhang Lai finished speaking, Zhang Haoze's finger moved. The knife had already pierced into Zhang Yang's thigh. Ah, Zhang Yang cried out. Bai Shuqiao screamed and wanted to rush over, but she was held up by someone. I like to be polite before resorting to force. Zhang Haoze looked quite easy to talk to. How did Zhang Li leave this place? Where is Zhang Kun? If you don't tell me, I can only continue. As he spoke, the knife that was stabbed into Zhang Yang's thigh was pulled out. Blood gushed out, and Zhang Yang screamed even more miserably. Zhang Lai stood up, and someone held him up from behind. He couldn't move at all. He shouted at Zhang Haoze, do you have a conscience? He's your younger brother. My mother only gave birth to me. I don't have a younger brother. Zhang Haoze tilted his head, and the knife stabbed in again. Zhang Yang was about to faint from the pain. Bai Shuqiao was furious. She kept cursing, but she was afraid that Zhang Haoze would use even more ruthless methods later. Stop. Zhang Lai was furious. I'm your father. Stop right now. Zhang Haoze raised his head. The person who was holding Zhang Lai actually bent her knees. Ha. Zhang Lai had been living a comfortable life all these years. His face turned pale when he was suddenly treated like this. Zhang Haoze, you don't say that you're my father. You don't deserve it. Zhang Haoze looked at him coldly. His gaze was cold, without a trace of warmth. His eyes were filled with deep hatred. He looked at them as if he was looking at a dead person. If you don't tell me where Zhang Kun is today, I can only continue to poke holes in your beloved youngest son's body. I just don't know how long he can last. As he spoke, the subordinate pulled out the knife again. This time, Zhang Yang didn't even scream. He fainted from the pain. Bai Shuqiao wanted to stand up again, but she ended up like Zhang Lai. Her knees were pushed forward, and it looked like she was going to kneel down to Zhang Haoze. She hated him more and more, but her cursing became much softer. When Zhang Haoze's men were about to stab him for the third time, Zhang Lai finally couldn't take it anymore. Enough. I'll talk. Zhang Haoze asked his men to stop. Zhang Lai looked at Zhang Haoze. I don't know. Just as Zhang Haoze was about to get someone to attack again, Jean-Lai quickly explained, I really don't know. The last time Uncle Chi came to see us, he said he would think of a way. The next day, we found out that Jean-Lai had disappeared. Afraid that Jean Hausa would make another move, Jean-Lai shrunk his neck. I only know this much. I don't know the rest. Jean Hausa stood still, and his subordinate's knife once again pressed against Zhang Yang's leg. I really don't know. Everything was arranged by Uncle Chi, we just listened to him. Jean Hausa asked his men to stop and stared at Jean-Lai for a long time. With a wave of his hand, he quickly left with the dozen bodyguards. As for the wound on Zhang Yang's leg, as long as it didn't pierce his bones, he wouldn't die. For the next 2 days, Jean Hausa was looking for Zhang Kun and Zhang Yang. Zhang Yang was not to be feared. But Zhang Kun. He had controlled the Zhang family for so many years, and his methods were first-rate, sinister and ruthless. It turned out that he hadn't been given a chance. So be it. Now that there was a chance, he wouldn't let it go so easily. He just didn't know what Zhang Kun was planning to do. No matter what he did, Jean Hausa wasn't afraid. He had already made all the necessary preparations. Naturally, he wouldn't let Zhang Kun have the chance to take back the power that was already in his hands. Moreover, his goal was to destroy the Zhang family. When he returned to the Cherry Blossom Manor, Shi Mengwan was already asleep. These few days, he had been busy searching for Zhang Kun's whereabouts, so he had neglected her a lot. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Zhang Hausa's movements were very light, but he accidentally woke Shi Mengwan up. Dear brother. In a daze, Shi Mengwan, who had dreamed of her youth, thought that her dear brother had returned. Zhang Hausa's response was to give her another kiss. Only then did she wake up. Why did you only come back now? Have you eaten? I've eaten. I've been busy recently, so I neglected you. As Zhang Hausa spoke, he kissed her on the lips again. Shi Mengwan shook her head. It's okay. I wasn't idle either. In the Cherry Blossom Manor, there was a full set of drawing tools that Zhang Hausa had sent over. A work desk, a computer, everything was available. She would be busy these few days. Her wedding with Zhang Hausa was only a matter of time. She had her own ideas about her wedding. Not only did she have her own ideas, but she also had requirements for the wedding dress. In this way, she had something to do, so she was much calmer about Zhang Hausa not coming back. I'll accompany you after I'm done with my work. Zhang Hausa thought for a moment. How about I take you to see the studio tomorrow? The renovations are almost done. If you have any ideas, you can bring them up. Sure. Shi Mengwan wanted to go when she heard him say that, but Zhang Hausa had been busy, so she didn't mention it. Well, then go to bed early. We'll go to the studio tomorrow. He didn't touch Shi Mengwan. He kissed her on the forehead and let her sleep. Zhang Kun couldn't find him for a while, but he wasn't in a hurry. The next morning, Zhang Hausa woke up and brought Shi Mengwan to the studio he had arranged for her. However, before he could go out, he received the news from Tang Hua. There was news of Zhang Kun. Zhang Hausa hung up the phone and looked at Shi Mengwan with an inexplicable sense of guilt. If you have something to do, go do it. Don't worry about me. Wan. It's okay. You can ask anyone to accompany me. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.